Good afternoon, members. We'll just make a start. Just point out that we are this time live webcasting, and it's live. We'll just make a start. Just point out that we are. Oh, I'm echoing. Good afternoon, Councillor Strachan. Yeah, glad you managed to get here. Good afternoon, members of the panel. If we could start, welcome to the meeting of Northamptonshire Police Fire and Crime Panel here in the Mabin Room, 1 Angel Square in Northampton. Could I first of all have apologies for absence or notification of substitute members, please?
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillors Pritchard, Smith and Gonzalez de Savage, who are all West Northamptonshire Council representatives. Thank you.
Do we have any notifications to request from members of the public to speak?
None received, Chair.
Okay. Declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest of nature of that interest if they may have at any time in any of the items under consideration. Now, first of all, I'll just ask you, can you hear me, or shall I take my mask off? Would it be easier to hear? Yeah. You can hear? Oh. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Okay. Right. We've done declarations of interest that are now Chair's announcements. As you've realised now, the meeting is being webcast live, and you are asked to use your microphones to make sure that members of the public, and this is going out over YouTube, will also be able to hear you. I attended the annual conference of the police and crime panels on the 2nd of November, and I did, rather than take up time during the meeting, I did send a report round to members to tell you a bit about that. So we'll go on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of September. I won't go through it page by page, but are there, I think we have one, yes, one.
Chair, I did send apologies to your good self.
Yes, unfortunately I must have missed passing that on, so if we could amend them in that way, please. Any other inaccuracies? If I could just ask on page 6, I hope the Commissioner's got the same. There was a bid put in for round 3, the Safer Streets initiative. Commissioner, have we had any, or Nikki, have we had, is that was expected to come back in November? Do we have an outcome for that?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I missed the first bit.
Yeah, sorry, it's the Safer Streets round 3 bid.
Yes, we were awarded some additional money, 300,000, which I think you saw because you were there as part of the launch of a snow bus, which we invested in addition to that. Lovely,
thank you. Any other points anyone else wants to raise on minutes? If not, we'll go on. Oh, I did notice it was pointed out the JIAC, they'd said that they were up to speed sort of size, but I did actually notice on the website that they've just advertised for 2 extra members. So obviously there was a need for 2 extra members.
I think you'll find that was a term limit and a retirement, I think, yes.
So it was a term limit, was it?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, thank you very much then. If we can agree the minutes, everyone happy to agree the minutes? Okay. Next we go on to the big item of the day really, which is the new police fire and crime plan. And I'll hand over to Stephen Mould to take us through it. Oh, sorry, councillor Strachan. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, on page 9, Chair, bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think bullet point 8, reference to community policing. I'm pleased to announce that or report that we do now have a dedicated PC or officer for St. George. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we have had communications with police in general. As a matter of fact, I think 4 police officers plus the PCSOs that have been working with us in St. George with the with antisocial behavior and also with the community safety engagement team. So we have been doing some work, and I'm very pleased with that and pleased with the efforts being made by the police. Also, yesterday I had a report from the public in Kingsley that there was some undercover police work going on. So I'm very pleased with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I can hand over then to Stephen Mould to present his new plan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, Madam Members. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Just before I move into that piece, yes, I received a report. We are now ahead of schedule on the recruitment of our neighbourhood teams. We said we would double it. We're doing that. In addition to that, we're just making sure that all of you have got access to who your named person is. As a quirk of the national system we've adopted, we actually found we couldn't put that page up on our own site. So it's actually on the NCALC website right now who your named contact is with the thing is. However, it will also be added to my website so you know who they are and maintained on that basis. So actually you will know who's responsible in terms of your areas.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And in addition to that, we stand by our commitment to treble it. So another 60 will be added to neighbourhoods over the next 18 months as we go out and recruit. And the very nice thing is such is the, how can I put it? Neighbourhoods used to be an area that people didn't want to apply for, such is the new model. And the report I have, they're actually now over applying and we can't stop them trying to go there. So actually people are really seeing the value, and that also helps because then you're getting quality people in all of those areas. So anyway, sorry, Madam Chairman, I should go back to the agenda. I apologise before you tell me off. Today you have in front of you the first police, fire and crime plan for Northamptonshire, actually the first in the country. For the first time, this is a plan for the police and fire, reflecting my responsibility to set the strategic direction for both services in Northamptonshire. I want to be clear, it does not represent an exhaustive list of all activity that will happen, but sets out my key priorities for both organisation up to 2026. I'm proud of the improvements we've been able to deliver across both services over the last few years. And this plan is both designed to protect and build on what we have achieved together, but with a renewed focus on the core objective of making Northamptonshire a safer place. As you will see, the new plan contains a number of joint objectives for the Chief Constable and Chief Fire Officer, as well as working with partners. Since becoming the PFCC for Northamptonshire, it has become even clearer for me that many of the problems that affect Northamptonshire can ever be solved by just one organisation. So I want to entrench and expand the collaborative work the Northamptonshire Police do with them and Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue undertake in our communities, but to make this county as safe as it can be. But we also need to see this collaborative approach can deliver real improvements, and we need to lead to more resources available for our frontline services. So, as you will see, we undertake a wide-scale consultation on the draft plan, both internally, externally, and across with partners, to ensure a wide range of views were sought to ensure that we were considered, with partners and other close stakeholders were also invited to cascade the consultation in addition to their own input, so that we could ensure that we reached the consultation, the reach of the consultation was significant. The public was supportive of all the proposed activities. All priorities saw an agreement that they should be included in the police fire and crime plan, above 90%. The majority of the public reported that all the priorities were important. Over 95% of the participants, get stuck with my P's today, stated that they were important, very important, fairly important, or slightly important for all of the priorities. Obviously, full details are in the pack that you've been sent. The new police fire and crime plan represent the latest stage in a collective journey of improvement and underlines my challenges for us to raise the bar yet further and challenge Northamptonshire Police and Northamptonshire Fire Rescue aim for the best. We've spent the last 5 years working consistently to invest and improve our frontline services. We're now on course to have more police officers than ever before, and by 2023, there will be more than 1,500 police officers in Northamptonshire. In addition to this, we've been able to bring much needed stability and investment to improve the services that our firefighters provide. As I've explained to you before, there are many challenges ahead, but this plan emphasises my commitment to challenging the status quo to free up resources to ensure we can meet the challenges head on. Madam Chairman, this plan represents my blueprint for the future of policing and the fire and rescue service in Northamptonshire. I make no apologies for the challenges it sets to all of us, and I'm more than confident that by us working closely together, we have the commitment and motivation with dedication on the work we've done so far to be more visible in our communities, to build trust and confidence and make Northamptonshire safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have some questions to put to the Commissioner? Anyone? Shall I start off then? I just wonder whether you, the number of people who replied, I mean, I know it's always difficult to get responses to consultations, but it was only 0.2 of the population in Northamptonshire, I should say. And, you know, whether you were wanted to have a comment on that and whether you had any ideas of how to increase that in future, because I do note that the Peel report mentioned about improvement of engagement with the public. So is there some way of getting them more responsive?
There is no easy answer to all the consultations that we absolutely do. Obviously, the best and the most significant one, as we touched on last time, is actually, you know, the police and crime plan builds on the commitments that I made to the public, of which over 102,000 people kind of voted for. I may be wrongly, and I could be proved wrong at the next election. I take from the rather large endorsement received at the ballot box that there was trust, and this is an iterative process built on the work that we've already been doing. But we continue to look for innovative ways. I'm sat here eagerly awaiting the information as we speak, as we get the financial settlements for police and fire, as Mrs. King is busily crunching numbers to see where our predictions and our objectives are working. I suspect the overall, you do find that there is a large silent majority that people are very happy with the direction. When I start asking them next week about what they're prepared to pay for it, I probably am expecting a slightly higher response when that time comes.
So it could well be that, usually when people are happy, they don't respond, but when they're unhappy, they do.
And I think there's a degree of that, but that's not my working assumption. We continue to strive to listen to people, and whilst just under 2,000 people is a relatively small percentage, it's still a reasonable number of people.
Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I forgot to apologise for being late. I've been going around in circle in the car park because I was assigned Bay 5, but Bay 5 was occupied, and I had problems with security in the past.
Don't worry about it.
I didn't want to break the law, so to speak, but I have done. I have to admit, in order to get here. Chair, I'm in agreement with you. I was looking for something like a 13% or so response, which is sort of the average we tend to get for consultation. But unfortunately, it's not the case. What I'm very pleased about is the breakdown of the demographics. This is very good because it gives us a clear indication of where we need to go in the future. And thank you very much for that, whoever put this together. This is very good. Thank you.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I'm interested in the fact that you've actually said that crime figures are down, but in fact, in some parts of your report, that isn't the case. And do you think COVID-19 has had a sort of an impact on the reduction of crime figures because people haven't been going around doing on their normal, either going to work or going to school, etc. So can you explain to me how some crime's gone up and some crime has stayed the same? So if you look at antisocial behaviour, for example, that hasn't gone away. In fact, it's increased, but it's not necessarily being handled in quite the same way as it used to be. Would you agree?
Madam Chairman, I will take the liberty of replying to you. I think I was going to.
I'm just wondering.
Did you want to do that in the thing, or actually this is the discussion about the strategic direction of police?
Yeah, I think that's more on the
follow your guidance.
update. Yeah, if we can leave that to.
Or if you want, I'm happy to deal with that one right now and then revert to it. It's up to you.
No, it's right. Leave it.
Yeah, I just wondered also. Previously we had this plan on a page. It was very easy. Are you planning to sort of do a plan on the page from this plan as well? And one thing that I noticed, perhaps not quite so prominent as previously, was the cyber fraud, in view of the fact that that is an up and coming crime, expanding and causing a lot of problems to people.
At the moment, this is how I'm intending to lay out the plan. Probably because of the complicated nature and really highlighting the clarity of thinking around, if you like, the 5 objectives that I very clearly set. I'm glad you brought up cybercrime because actually I spent some time in. There was a particular section where we'd got it, and it was particularly around the prevention, and we'd actually got some language about it. So I can't find the exact page in front of me, but I know from memory I adjusted the word very specifically to make sure cyber and so in other words online, and I split them apart. They are both equally important, and it is referenced particularly. And I haven't got the paragraph of. Thank you. I know it's in there because it was around prevention that I added it. So it's actually under. I've got it on page 38 on mine, I thought I'd said. How work to prioritise gang-related drug dealing. And also in the second paragraph, the prevention will focus on all those to tackle crimes such as fraud and cyber-related crime. And the reason we broke them out, these are nuanced pieces, but actually on there is a lot more around online safety than just fraud. There's young children being groomed, for instance, and preventive some of those. So that's very specifically why I broke them out. But we continue to work on that. One of the things I do think policing needs to see on a national basis, particularly on fraud, it's dealt with by Action Friar, which is administered by the City of London on behalf of national UK policing. I'm not convinced that is fit for purpose. I don't believe people get as good a service as they should, and it's something we're taking up collectively to try and see something done about. But we were made to committed to doing something about it.
Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I find it interesting that in fact, actually, this has definitely increased, and a lot more, I would say, probably older people are victims of this, but it's how you actually tackle it. And it's a hidden thing, because some people don't report if they've been sort of targeted through no fault of their own. And so, for example, having large amount of money taken out their bank accounts without them actually realising it. And where does the police actually fit in with handling that type of crime when it is a crime, but it's how you actually address it?
But we could spend quite a lot of time on this. I won't, but as I shall get it. But there's several parts of that. I think there is a very significant change coming. At the moment, the banks reimburse people, which quite frankly has been a challenge on one level. It's great for the person, because then the desire to follow up and report it diminishes because they've had the money returned to them. It's my understanding that that's going to change next year, and as a consequence of that, I think the landscape and it will get even more in terms of focus. But actually, we have a number of programs that we're investing in, particularly on the educational one, to actually make sure, and that's in conjunction with UK banking and financial institutions, to make sure, and some of you've seen it, it's the stop, pause and thing in terms of campaign. I probably used the wrong name, for which I apologise. I obviously gen up for these, but I can't remember the definition of every single one. I actually think that will change it, which is why I think Action Fraud, because the problem is a lot of the perpetrators of this are not necessarily in this country. And so actually it's quite a lot of it has been outside of it. One of the things that we invested in here in Northamptonshire, particularly on the cyber front, was a thing called Cyber Alarm, developed by a company here in Northamptonshire that we piloted and funded, that's nationally been rolled out. It's protecting a lot of your systems and actually identifies where the origin of some of these things are, which is actually in conjunction with the National Crime Agency. There have now been a number of operations, but actually requires a kind of an international response. But you'll see that was a successful prosecution only recently, where someone was perpetrating the pornographic images of children, and he was locked up here in Northamptonshire. So it does happen. It is targeted, but if anything, like a lot of this, going back to the strategic direction of the plan, we need to do all we can to prevent, and we need to continue to invest more in that, from stopping it happening in front of it. Whether that's from young kids being part of gangs, whether it's education around knife crime. Those are the pieces that we do, and I think that's the two highest, as you can see there, that the public endorsed, if you like, is actually making sure that, God forbid you are a victim, is that that there's going to be a decent response, and the other one is, what are you doing to stop it happening in the first place? And if there's probably one big shift in my time in this post, is helping to make that shift, that everyone understands it's not about just responding, it's about what are we doing from stopping it happening in the first place. So there is some bit that we absolutely need to do from an educational point of view, but also making sure that we grow our competence and capability. And whilst the 500 new police officers are challenge is the wrong word, their growth and knowledge continues to be something we're both investing in, and they're not as experienced as some of those ones that are leaving at high end. The one thing we do have is they're way more technically savvy, if that makes sense. And one of the things that we are actually working on is our kind of digital capability. So at the moment, if you've got digital devices, they need to be taken to a location. We're actually funding digital vans, so in other words, digital forensics, so they can actually go and do that up there. Because one of the ones, if I take particularly the women and violence against women and girls agenda, one of the ones that's a real issue is victim attrition, because actually they don't want to give up their digital devices for 6 months while we look at them. These are the ones that will then enable us to do some of those things much quicker.
Presumably you must work quite closely with Trading Standard as well on some of those matters, since they sort of have a cross sort of, they deal with that sort of crime as well. You know.
Absolutely, but there's always better could have been done. I think when the unitaries were coming, I did lobby for maybe the governance should change and maybe the money, but I didn't win that argument. So they can work even closer together.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Councillor McGee first.
Thank you, Chair. No surprise, I've got 3 questions for you, please. Where you've discussed, which I was quite pleased to see, the line between the victim or the perpetrator is becoming blurred, I completely agree with that. Specifically in the case of young people, that is becoming more and more common, that people are getting trapped into a lifestyle as a victim and then ending up in situations. But where you speak about tireless enforcement activity to target organised and serious crime, I think that it's important that those two are very aware of each other. And then when you're doing this, what's the phrase on this one, robust enforcement, it's managed in a way that is approachable and in a way that encourages people to talk to the police and to open up to the police. So we've had conversations before that that's not always the case, and that I sat in Kingswood Youth Club the other week with DCA Garn, who is brilliant, and we had a round the table discussion, and I said to him, in front of the children, we had the discussion, do you think your police officers treat every one of these children the way that you would like them to treat you? And very respectfully and very honestly, he said no. So we have to keep that in mind and make sure that's on both sides.
Can I do? I have a simple one. Can I respond to each one in it?
Yeah, that's probably it's easier. Yeah.
I'm a simple one. I wholeheartedly agree, and it's very easy that we do get hung up on the numbers when I talk in terms of the neighbourhood team. That's why it's so important, because actually you've got people that have a slightly, that have a different approach. So actually, we've got response, which are those ones when there's 999, they're gonna come. They're action-oriented people that need to kind of come there. A communicative and a neighbourhood enhancing, and if I might go, the key piece is kind of, if you like, it is the bit at the front, which really is around if you're making Northamptonshire working with the community, so it's actually in conjunction with. So we're not there yet, but it is at exactly that point, and I appreciate that working in conjunction with, which is why also the youth teams being attached to the neighbourhood bits, and also it's simple things as well. I was out on the beat bus and I was talking to some parents the other day, and it's kind of like, you better behave yourself or we're going to call the police. It's kind of really not very helpful, because you're right. If you're engendering fear, and actually it needs to be a much more symbiosis kind of relationship that needs to occur. So I completely agree, and Gan's a kind of a great example. And the fact that people want to be in neighbourhood policing and is not seen as a retrograde step for someone's kind of career is kind of is a big win as part of the cultural thing. So there are lots of bits that kind of go on, and it's very easy also when we talk about the plan, you kind of have to look at the plan in its totality, because actually it's the approach that's kind of underneath it and those pieces, rather than kind of sometimes specific elements, because you can imagine the debates we've had about this word there, that one, and the kind of nuance. So
Councillor.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that and I agree with it. There was another thing about the awareness campaigns to reduce the number of knives on the street. I just wanted to ask you really, and then sort of feedback, quite honestly, that the lighting up building initiative was not very well received in my area at all, and was not the finest moment for feedback that I've got. So I just wanted to ask, is there any more sort of things that you're planning that are perhaps a bit more along the lines of what we're discussing, involving the community and less of a, to put it bluntly, less of a token and more of an action?
Well, that's a lovely question, councillor. How can I put it? One of previous to this, I used to work in technology, and we kind of had a saying, which was kind of fail and fail fast. Maybe in your eyes, that's what you constitute as what's kind of occurred there. When you're trying new and innovative things, then sometimes you might not get it right and wrong. There are some responses that we've had in different parts of the county also where it has kind of worked okay, and I think sometimes that is the challenging. When you're actually trying to protect the best part of 800,000 people, kind of what works in Corby doesn't work in East Northants or South Northants or something like that, and that's why also it needs to be kind of around kind of local teams. But to be honest with you, absolutely right, it needs to be a collaborative approach and taking kind of people on that journey, and that's why if you like putting a lot of weight on the shoulders of neighbourhoods, because that's much more about conversations and in conjunction. At the end of the day, 1,500 police officers cannot make Northamptonshire safe. If the community doesn't share information with them, can't do anything. We all have a part in it. The criminal justice system needs to work to a point where people go, do you know what, I'm going to report it and I'm going to follow through, because otherwise that person kind of goes free. And that means, supporting women against the violence against girls and women agenda to make sure that they can kind of go on it. Yeah, we have a lot of debates about domestic violence and whether someone should be arrested or not. Now, our view is it's not always appropriate, but it depends on what degree. And I think what we're kind of getting in as Northamptonshire Police gets more, as growing more sophisticated, is it can deal with nuances rather than the kind of blunt. And there's a good example of where maybe it hasn't learned from its nuance.
Sorry, I know I'm taking so much time. Final question, I promise. I'm looking at the demographic breakdown of the survey, which is actually really brilliant thing. And I'm looking at the 3 places sort of anyone that sort of has been to any meetings with me recently will be sick of hearing me say this, but the 3 places that are participating in the levelling up agenda and are left behind neighbourhoods actually have the weakest engagement. And I think that's probably not a coincidence. But what I'd like to say is there any initiatives that could take place to get more feedback from those areas, to specifically target those areas? Because we've learned from our walkabouts and our community sessions that we've held that there are people that are crying out to have conversations with yourself, with the police, with their local police officer, with their PCSO. There are people who do want to engage, and perhaps the strategy that's being used at the moment isn't hitting those people. Final question.
More than happy to work you with it. I actually, when I saw the report and I saw the percentage of Corby, I actually was expecting you to ask me that question, and quite rightly so, in terms of thing. No one's perfect. There's always lessons kind of learn. Actually, I would probably have said that I'd be more interested in doing some more public engagement, particularly with you in Corby. Sadly, COVID is not making it easy for kind of all of us, but I'm very happy to kind of take that one away and explore that with you.
Okay. Councillor Carr. And then Mrs.
Thank you, Chair. Stephen, firstly, thank you for this. I don't know whether anybody else has said thank you, but whilst you're on camera, and it's always useful if anybody's going to go away and look at this afterwards, just tell us where we can find this on the website, and does it come in any other formats for people who perhaps have English isn't their first language, or they've got a disability? Just tell us, and then at least it's on film and we can go back and watch it later.
At this moment, no, it's not available publicly, because at the moment you folks haven't agreed with me and approved it yet. Yeah. Subsequently, we do intend it will be published on the the OPFCC website with all the necessary bits around it, because I know I've got some people who said that the print had been used, and I think Madam Chairman had raised to me, I think it was actually a print that she was using at the time, that we hadn't printed it in a large enough font in some of those kind of ones. We will look to make sure that we try and address all of those, and it will be on our website. But I can't guarantee if you approve it today, it'll be there before Christmas, but you know, certainly in the new year.
Certainly this version, which I was given personally, is in a big font. So it's when I printed it out, it was so tiny I could barely read it. Yes. So next we have Mrs. Shields.
Yes. Good morning, Stephen. Oh, no, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I don't want to correct you, but yes.
First of all, I'd like to say I really like the presentation of your consultation with the public. It is clear. It shows also the concern that citizens have vis-à-vis of various measures, such as, for instance, no other priority identified that should be included, visibility, community engagement, and so forth. So I thought this was very good in terms of feedback. The other point I would like to say, and I concur with the councillor, I can't remember your name, whereby cyber fraud, you stated that you've initiated a program for carers to protect vulnerable people into homes. I think that idea is excellent. However, I'm wondering that for those in the same category that live on their own in their house, for instance, elderly or disabled or vulnerable people who may not be IT knowledgeable. And these are the ones who fall into the trap, into cyber fraud. And I think, and once again, you've highlighted education, and maybe some leaflets would be helpful for those individuals who need to be informed of the danger. I know, like for instance, a credit card like Barclays and Nationwide and so forth have their own system, but it doesn't mean necessarily that this group I've just highlighted have the mean, have the card, or have an account, and there will be falling into the trap of cyber. So I was wondering if you have any idea of implementing such similar help. Thank you.
This is a strategic document, so I don't come armed with my long list of things that all I'm going to do over the next couple of years. But it is one of those, and the one around carers is a good example of one of the ones we've got. It really is around education, vulnerability, and there is some of these that will be done in conjunction with different organisations, not just policing, to make sure in terms of prevent. I look forward to bringing to future meetings and telling you of some of the initiatives we've got in this area.
Thank you.
Okay, Pauline.
Yes, Commissioner, thank you for the report, and I do like the breakdown.
Madam Chairman, if you press your button, it's
Yes,
not
sorry,
on. I can hear you, but I'm not sure they can online.
Thank you. Thank you for the survey and for the breakdown in terms of the responses that you've received. For me, I read it, and when you look at the ethnicity in terms of the responses that you got back, for me, my heart sank a little bit knowing the ethnic makeup of Northamptonshire. On page 44 of your report, also, while we're talking about making the police force and the fire service better represent making them a better representative in their communities. For me, I want to understand how are you and your team ensuring that both the police force and the fire service are better represented. And picking up on the point that Councillor McGee is brought up in her last point, which is like the communities that we seem to be needing to kind of reach and be hearing from, it's almost like we're not getting that. And I'd be happy to kind of, whatever I can do to support that and look at how we kind of move forward with that. Next time you've got a survey coming out and things like this, how we can work with the wider community on that. Because for me, the response, I read it, and as I said, my heart sank from ethnicity kind of point of view. Okay, so could you explain to me how you're going to ensure that the police force and the fire service better represents their community?
No. What do I mean? First of all, let's be clear. This is a strategic document that sets the ambition.
Yes.
I cannot make them do it. I will hold them to account to make sure we deliver it. I'm very happy to discuss with you how we can kind of broaden our engagement, but also on the other one, I can't make somebody kind of fill it in, but I can assure you we did very specific things to target particular areas in terms of the bit. Now, that does, I don't mean that as, I don't want anyone to take that to go, I'm satisfied. No, we need to do that. So first, from a consultation point of view, we need to kind of go away and have a look and see what we can do to get a better response from all sectors of the community. Because conversely, I get, have you got the right percentage of women? Have you got the right percent of young people? So I always want to make sure I can get as accurate a picture as I can based on the makeup of the totality of the population of Northamptonshire. The second part, the force and the fire service have made genuine progress in terms of reflecting. If I just use the recent detective intake, it actually has 80% of women, if you like, who are actually in that group. So there is an interesting bit in terms of what people do and don't do and what jobs they do and don't want to kind of apply for. And I think we're getting better at, or each service is getting better at understanding it. Now, of course, that's actually easier for argument's sake for the police service to be better reflective, because we're on a major recruitment drive. When you've got 254 on the fire service, and I think even under my tenure with the big 20 that we raised last year, that's a very small percentage. So in theory, it's going to take a long time to get there. And I'm sure you're not advocating I should fire 50 of them just so I could kind of recruit and push up my diversity number. I am being slightly facetious to kind of give you the context, but I suppose I want you to be very assured that we were very robust to ensure that we do look very carefully at their recruitment. And funny enough, I actually even have in front of me, because I thought someone would ask it, and since we've gone to the chance of looking up, I thought it might give me a chance to doing it. So if you take for the force, for instance, and you're going to ask me more, my primary one was around gender of new recruits, is actually, so of the 115 recruits that we've recruited this year, from 69 are women and 69 are men and 46 are women, which is one of the highest in terms of the country of attracting women to it. Now, I bet if I look under that, the cultural diversity and some of the age profile probably won't where we'd want to be. But the important thing probably that you can be assured of, I'm not sure we knew those things a couple of years ago. So the sheer fact that now we can measure them means we're in a better position to do it. And we're very proactively kind of going out to make sure. But I'm happy to, if you like, let's set up a separate conversation, maybe with yourself and Winston, and we'll have a look at that, see what else we could do to kind of reach out to different communities. And I probably expect Councillor McGee to rightly say to me, and then what are you doing around young people as well?
Thank you for that.
Councillor Maxwell, you're next. Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure. I thought you were saying.
Paul Russell, see, he's had his hand up for hours.
I thought it was Russell saying that Dorothy, I beg your pardon.
I haven't.
would you like to go first? Chair.
Oh, sorry, just before we leave.
Sorry, I haven't
sorry.
finished.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say, I remember having this same conversation with you last year, this time, Commissioner, and I know that this is a strategic document, okay? And it's not, you know, I don't expect you to do the chief's job for them. I guess I'm just asking from your perspective, how you're supporting them to make sure that it's going to be completed. On that note, I just want to go back and say as well, just to add that the neighbourhood officers, yes, there is you can notice the difference in quite a few neighbourhoods. Okay, I've also seen the fire service out as well doing things in the community. So I just wanted you to make note of that those positive works going on in the community.
Thank you. In case I didn't answer it, so as part of our, by having it as a strategic document, there is a performance framework that sits behind it that I will then hold them to account and measure for. That then comes in your pack, so you will actually see the detail, and I expect to be asked questions and provide you with further details when you see some of those.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you'll notice that there is a new statutory obligation on me to provide a comment, more on the force than the fire service, but we'll look at both to actually provide my almost state of policing perspective quarterly, which is something we'll be doing. And obviously that will be an important part of it.
Excellent.
Okay. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report because there's a fresh new way of thinking going on in this report, in my opinion. And if we're going to engage with the communities and continue to engage as we have been, I think what will come from the communities is they'll own the report, they'll own the work. So I think this is a really very good report, strategic report. And I hope everybody gets behind it. The question I've got for you is, it's going to take a lot more people, a lot more man hours, woman hours, hours of work. I think I've covered that. Where's the money coming from for all of that?
The important thing, I suppose, I would say when I took on the governance of the fire service, the police service, we'll deal with that one first. In the first budget, I inherit a budget of £110 million a year. The budget that we're discussing for this year for policing is 150 million. So in 5 short years, the policing budget has gone up by, just under a third, I think. So there is a significant investment in keeping the community safe. A good proportion of that has, in equal part, has come from both central government and also from local taxpayers. It's interesting, and I probably was going to say this later, but I'll reflect on this now, because the working assumption of the government in its premise in thinking is I have the latitude to raise admittedly it will still be below inflation, but it'll be something like over the next 3 years is £10, which is Mrs. King will correct me, I think it's 3.7, 3.6 and 3.5%, which is above inflation. That really is the limit of the money we'll go in. Other than that, it's going to have to stay inflationary, because I'm very aware of the burden on local taxpayer. On a secondary point, we were in, was it only last Friday, ladies, that we were in the Home Office discussing the funding formula with the team. This is going on. They're working up the numbers. So I still hope, but as I was also politely reminded, I think one force thinks they're going to lose and 42 think they're all going to be winners. Not everyone can be right. We were there to kind of make our representation to make sure that we kind of get a better deal. This isn't also about just all more money. It's great we've got new police officers, great we've got new firefighters, and the reason for the document is actually about making sure that we do drive up improvements and do things better, smarter. Some of the stuff that we've done around enabling services. The reason I was a little late, a bit like Councillor Strachan, I drove around the car park trying to find a councillor and then walked to the wrong part of the building. But prior to that, I was on the call with Her Majesty HMIC FRS on the start of the latest fire inspection for those, and one of the ones we were kind of talking about is money, but we were actually also talking about the combining of, and ironically, it's funny, isn't it? Because actually the bit that the public, and I understand why, because it's actually about outcomes and that's what they want to measure it. But actually, I wanted to make sure that we have organisations that are fit for purpose, that can deliver, that've got infrastructure. Some of the comments that always ring in my mind is from some of the stuff that happened in the county council. We genuinely need to do the boring well. But it was funny on me that they're not interested in the fact that the organisations are fit for purpose, so that the infrastructure and the building blocks are underneath it. But actually, you probably won't have read it. There was also the HMIC just published his very beautiful report, which is on the state of fire, came out yesterday at 4 o'clock. And one of the ones they got in there was the use of technology in fire was, quite frankly, poor. So actually, this comes as a consequence of some of those bits. We've got to continue to find efficiencies about how we do stuff better with the money we've been given. The people of Northamptonshire have given a nice step of money for both police and fire, and I shall be asking for more this year. It's incumbent on us that we spend that money extra wisely. So some of the efficiencies we're finding out, combining contracts between the two, sharing of buildings, disposal of ones, will help to kind of free up some of those ones. But I don't intend to overburden people above the rate of inflation over the next couple of years.
Could I just say, Chair, that I think this fresh approach of partnership working, where there is a budget, maybe more than one budget, and you can start working together, and monies can cascade into other things from that sort of thing. Because some of the people who, there's a recognition now about crime, I think, that it's everyday pressures of life and lifestyle that can sometimes lead people into, say, an addiction. And they're victims, they're not criminals. And that's, I'm very pleased to see in your strategic report that this fresh thinking is coming through, and I support it and will support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think it comes through loud and clear, the prevention, collaboration, and I think that's as Councillor Roberts said, that it helps, and certainly bringing in all these different bidding for all these funds that have come in, that's also helpful. Mrs. Shields.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I concur with the comment. I concur with the comment you've just made about partnership, and I do like the new initiative that your neighbourhood watch and also your neighbourhood alert. I'm a subscriber of Neighbourhood Alert, and I find that the tips that various constables provide for protecting your assets, or to make you aware that a crime has been committed in a specific area, to alert individual. I had an email from one of constable to inform me that there was 2 constables in Riverside and Western Fayval at a specific date and time. Now, I think it is great. However, can I ask you if you intend to do this feature on a regular basis, but also in terms of transparency and to provide continuity in engaging with a constable, would be to provide a name, because here you're giving the onus of the person to approach the constable and you don't have a name, and that is a bit frustrating. I would like to engage with some of these constables in the area which is nearest to me, but without a name is difficult. That's my point. Thank you.
Just on that, I go back to my point at the beginning. We will make it easier to find and access it. So it is on the NCalc place in terms of location. You will be able to find it on my website shortly, who your local people are and their contact details.
Okay, I've got Councillor Maxwell and then Councillor McGee. Yeah, and it's 2 o'clock.
Sorry.
That's why I left. Councillor Maxwell.
Well, my question is on, you say here that you're helping 4,430 children, and then you're targeting 565 individual sessions. You don't actually explain what these sessions are.
Would you help me and tell me what page you're looking
Well, it'd
at?
be quite useful if it was numbered, but it isn't. So I'd imagine.
Is it in the plan? Are we in the plan? Because
We are indeed.
The number is in the top right hand corner.
It must be 52. Yeah, it's 52. It doesn't have a number. We're not privileged to having numbers on our pages.
Could you just show me the one with GAN on it? Okay, I can deal with that.
Right. So my question is that given in the past 2 years, 76 children who were convicted of a criminal offence, it was the report stated from Children's Services that these children were not did not receive any education during the past 2 years. So my question to them was, at what time did they give them laptops? Did they give them home tuition one-to-one? Where does the police fit in with working with other types of either children's services or social services or schools? How do you actually visualize seeing yourself in the future working with these, what we would call NET, N-E-E-T. So, yeah, so people who do not necessarily go to school find themselves floating around the system, not getting any education, causing maybe some issues to the police. How are you actually going to reach out to these very children who seem to, for the last 2 years, slip through the net?
I'm very glad you brought that up. I do hope that, first of all, you hold to account your own organisation in Children's Services, because they're who are primarily responsible. But actually, it's not what we're going to do. We're going to continue what we're already doing, because a lot of work has been done. But do you want to comment on some of the work your teams are doing and some of the examples where they've actually kept them in education by working with them, where they've actually gone on to try and exclude them? And then I'll round back up.
Yeah, I mean, we do work collectively with schools, particularly the ACE team, because one of their key roles is actually to work with teachers and pastoral support staff in schools to try and keep the children in school in the first place, which is something we've had quite a significant success in doing. Our youth team is also an outreach youth team. So actually they are out in the community looking to engage young people wandering around who probably could or should be in school during the day and aren't. I mean, it is a difficult one, and I don't think anybody's really come to a cohesive solution on it. The problem that we've got is the reason why children end up not having full-time education are actually the reasons are very broad and very varied, and you know, we've got all sorts of issues around homeschooling, part-time timetables, young people just truanting, and unfortunately a lot of the resources that historically used to be in place, for example, to prevent young people from truanting from school, are no longer there. And that was a function of the local authority. They still tend to have very small teams, and certainly when I was last in NCC, the team was very small, and what they did was follow the statutory procedures in terms of taking the parents to court. What they don't do anymore is do the old-fashioned bit of pre-court work around truancy, where they actually go and knock on doors and try to drag the children into school. So it is very, very difficult. From a policing perspective, my teams work with the police work with social care. We're all involved in all of the various early help and safeguarding MASH arrangements. So collectively as partners, we do as much as we can within current resources to support young people. I don't think we have got that 100% right yet. And I'm not sure that there is a 100% right solution, unfortunately, in the current resource climate.
I think I'll just add to that.
Sorry.
Just add to that, there have been some really good examples where the ACE team have worked, where there was, in some instances, wrong reasons why someone was going to be excluded and they've kept them in. But there are also some circumstances where it's quite right that school excludes them. And I'm sure you're holding your own council to account on the provision. And I think we met with the chief execs of both councils. And I believe Nikki will correct me if I use it wrong, the alternative provision in terms of for excluded children is being looked at to make sure it's more robust for Northamptonshire, and I think that's probably with Ofsted. So I suppose we're part of the system, we're playing our part, but the primary responsibility is with your new authority.
So I think it's also fair to say that COVID won't have helped that situation. And even where children may have been provided with laptops and facilities to work from home, I know from personal experience that actually homeschooling isn't necessarily something that works on a sustainable basis for any length of time. So I think, it's not just children who may be involved on the periphery of crime that have perhaps suffered over the last 2 years. It's all of our children.
But please be assured before you come back in, is that we remain committed, and you probably can't see it because during the life of the plan, if you print it in black and white, which is what I think, it's because it's faded out, and maybe that's a lesson for my youth service we continue to invest and we'll continue to play our part. And as Councillor Roberts said, but it continues to be, and of course it's always very easy, isn't it, that it's all partnership working is always that bit more complicated. It's the right way to go, but actually it's that bit of trying to bring together, because it's always easier if you can just do it yourself. We've got to persevere on this in terms of working together, and for our part we remain committed to doing that.
Well,
Time's getting on, but we've got a couple of other people, so.
Can I just say one thing?
Yep.
Okay. Well, following what you've actually said, I am actually pressing very hardly with Children's Services about making sure that we meet the needs of these children. So what we have done last week, apparently, we are losing the head of Children's Services, and we're going to replace. It's going to be replaced by 2 separate people, one for North and one for West, and that will, personally, think it will make it much more focus on the area, because we are different to West. So I think that
I'm probably going to say that splitting it up, I'm not sure will help us, but that's your decision, not mine.
no. Well, my last question is just how much money do you actually spend from a police point of view in ensuring that these children that we're talking about, who are actually not being targeted at the present moment, or haven't been targeted for the last 2 years, how much money do you actually spend from your point of view on helping these children?
I can give you specific
probably in
numbers.
the finance section.
I don't know, because we wouldn't break it down to that thing. I could look at percentages and word it, because and I suppose it kind of sums up an element under the plan. Modern day crime is not simple. It wasn't that many years ago that, quite frankly, domestic violence didn't get even recorded. That's where it came from. It's a domestic, and actually there is no such thing as domestic. It's kind of a class of grouping of together. It's assault. It's those kind of things. But actually understanding, and the reason I invested in the ACE team, is the trauma that occurs of a child in a household, that even then that they're not being physically or mentally abused themselves, will go on to give them an adverse childhood experience that doesn't guarantee that they're going on to be a problem in the future, but it increases their kind of likelihood. You're looking at me as you want to say something, Nikki.
I'm just going to come in and say, we can get you a figure for what is spent from our office budget in terms of the early help and intervention, and we can get that circulated to people. We can quantify that. What we can't quantify necessarily is anything within the policing budget, because there will not be a policing budget for helping young children who are not in education, purely because actually it's not a function of policing. There will be, however, elements of the policing budget that do help those young people if they're missing young people, if they do become involved in crime. You know, there are elements of the budget that would be very hard to disaggregate where they are helped, but specifically there won't be a budget for that.
And obviously a larger burden of it pulls on neighbourhoods. One of the things are in the neighbourhood team now, we're starting to see, well, we probably were last week, more PCSO stuff going also into schools, break down barrier and kinds of engagement. But school exclusions needs to be something we all need to work very carefully on, and where it is appropriate, the alternative appropriate provision is available to support them, which I shall leave with you, Councillor.
Councillor McGee.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick one from me, and one that you might not necessarily have the answer to right now, but when you're going through the recruitment figures and the different demographics of recruitment and who's come on board recently, I'd be really interested to know in the demographic of age, like how many sort of, even like as young as 16-year-olds come and participate in a work experience or come and get some sort of experience and knowledge with you, and then also obviously from 18 plus to 30 or however you want to go, how many recruitments are there in that demographic? Just because there's we're talking a lot about young people who don't have a lot to do and don't have that opportunity, and they don't like the police either. What a way to get them involved by offering things like apprenticeships and work experience opportunities, and to bring them in and make them see that the police are not the enemy. Recently, the government did a Kickstarter scheme where obviously you can apply for anyone who's unemployed between the age of 18 to 26 to come and work, and they pay their wages for, I think it's 6 months. Something like that would go a long way, I think, in that demographic with the police and the fire brigade. So you might not necessarily have that information, but I think it's a really key thing to consider and think about. And also the demographic of people recruited from areas of social deprivation as well would be really interesting to know.
There's two parts to my answer in that one. One, we do have an age profile of some of the ones. I can firstly assure you it's on the younger age, because actually I will now make a pitch, if you like. What a fantastic way to come and get a degree. Come and be a police officer. You'll get paid. You'll get no debt, and we'll work with you to have a degree in conjunction with Northamptonshire University. So anyone who's interested, please apply. As a consequence of that, you will find we actually have a lot of 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, quite young people who are actually applying. One of the things, so we if anything, we've probably got, and I don't mean this how it's going to sound, so don't take it out of context, we've probably got too many young people coming in, and we need it to be kind of better balanced. So I wouldn't want to see even more, if that makes sense, because we have a deluge right now, which is not a bad thing. And the reason I say that, you know, if you come from a lovely white middle class background and you've joined the police and you've never seen any domestic violence and stuff like that, we have had some issues with some of our attrition rate. They're like, I didn't expect to see any violence, or I've never seen, you know, if you've got two 50-year-olds that are having an argument and a 19-year-old turns up and tells you what to do around thing, it comes kind of with its own challenge. So we've got to be, I go back to my point earlier, we've truly got to be representative of society, if you like, in terms of the ones we've got. The other ones that I'm very keen, we obviously have our emergency services cadets, and we're very keen to make sure we're helping to bring to more strategic focus to that, because in many respects, there was a lot of effort being put into using that kind of as a recruitment ground. Now, if that's the purpose, then to be blunt, we were wasting our money because the number of people who went on to be successful was kind of quite modest. I'm very keen, and we're prepared to put money behind it, see it focused from people to break down barriers, exactly as you mentioned. And you'll know that I want to say Kingswood School in Corby actually sponsor them themselves with great success. I'm very keen to see that model rolled out further across the county, because actually it both breaks down barriers, but in addition to that, it also makes sure that it's more inclusive. So some people who might need some structure in their life, you know, and yes, I fully accept that it's competing with scouts and other kind of things like that, but it really has an option. We will, and I don't know quite where we are on it, but I have put some money up for us to also launch mini police. It's something that's been run in other parts around the country, which actually is, you know, quite frankly, in the younger age group, you know, they kind of do investigations and forensics and understand some of those things to exactly break barriers. So there are a series of measures like those to kind of break down barriers and make sure that, because we're very cognizant that it's something that needs to happen.
Okay, Councillor Strachan, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm finding is that it isn't always easy to work with the public. Because while a lot of people want to see certain things happen in a certain way, there are another lot who take sort of opposite view. For example, we are asking the public, in some respect, in terms of flight tipping, to report any sort of flight tipping or antisocial behavior in terms of the police as well, to the right authorities. And we are handing out literature that have a long list of all the different organizations. If one has a problem, one can contact. But one of my colleagues had a letter, an email from a member of the public who was extremely critical of the police in regards to them knocking on the doors and trying to get them, as they claim in the email, to spy on their neighbors. And I said to my colleague, leave it with me, I'll get in touch with my contacts in the police to find out exactly what's going on. And the story was completely different. Completely different. Where they had a drive towards certain antisocial behavior and crimes. And yes, they were knocking on doors and they were explaining to people the sort of thing that's been happening in that particular area and what they would like to see the public do to help them, because the police can't be everywhere. But the response from that particular individual was extremely, in my view, unkind. So, you know, you've got to balance things. It isn't easy. On the other hand, we're talking about like cybercrime and how do we inform the public? Well, every year the police puts a document with the rate demands. Perhaps we can have something in there that sort of tells people what to look out for and what to be wary of. And I think that's one of the ways where it might be cheap, because it's one bit of paper with all this sort of different things, how you spend the money. But then there's a little bit, added bit that explains to people how they could protect themselves. So that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm not sure that particularly needs an answer.
I'll quickly respond to that. We do add a public service message on the thing, but you're right. We'll have a look at that as we're about to start our consultation, and we'll have a look at what bits thing. And you're right, in some respects, we are talking about money, so maybe cyber is one of those ones we could put there actually. And
basically, it would be cheaper to do it all in one go rather than. Somebody made the comment earlier about how do we inform the public about protecting themselves from certain, for instance, people are constantly getting telephone calls or emails on the PC system, which obviously it's not genuine. People are trying to get into the system. People are trying to get them to talk and then get them to give them information about the finances. So this is the sort of thing that we can add.
I think Mrs. Shield said actually the Action for All people, they put some of those things out. That's quite useful. Yeah.
Just on the other one, we have extended our fly tipping program, and obviously now it's the west and the north. I am actually keen. Now that was primarily focused on, because that's where the bulk of it was, where it's going in kind of rural. I am very keen to work with the councils to see if there's something that can be done in the more urban areas, because actually, you know, going back to the kind of the broken windows philosophy. And some of the bits there. And I think I made the offer previously that we were, I've even prepared to buy some cameras and provide them to the council, because that's easier for you to deploy them than it is for us, because in terms of Ripper. So if someone wants to get in touch with me, I'm keen to progress that. But I think your teams are working on that. But I am very keen in more some of the urban to provide some of those because deterrent. Because at the end of the day, catching, prosecute them is going to be the bit that's the big deterrent in that one.
Okay, Councillor Ross, I think you.
Very quickly, school's not the answer to everything with young people, and young people who are not in education or in employment need to be engaged very quickly, and their interests need to be found. Now, I know that Councillor Scott in Corby was in charge, or it was on a committee running an engineering company in Kettering, strangely enough, that was offering some of this, a few people, some really exciting opportunities. And I know there are a number of people throughout the whole of Northamptonshire, officers working really hard to engage these young people. But just to bring it back to what we're talking about today, I also know, I'm grateful for the work that the police force and the police and the commissioner has been doing over a number of years to ensure that he gets out there and engages with these young people. And offering up the opportunity to join a cadet force so that you can understand the opportunities that are there, because they're golden opportunities. We might think that, they don't. And we've got to get that message over to them. It's no good just thinking, well, why aren't they getting interested in this? Because you're not being interesting. Yeah. So I'm Chair, thank you for the opportunity. So I'm grateful for what police have
We've got a few. I've got Pauline next.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to the antisocial behaviour in young people in the neighbourhood. And this is a positive thing, actually. In one of the areas that I work in, I think about 2 months ago, one of the young people was walking around with a baseball bat and things like this, and everyone was scared, not knowing what to do. But somehow I've got a relationship with this young person, and he came and gave it to me. And only this week I was talking to one of our local officers, and I said I haven't seen him for a couple of weeks, and I was kind of getting a bit concerned, and they said, no, it's okay. There's some focus work going on with him. And funnily enough, as I got off the phone yesterday, I saw the young person came out to get some lunch, and we was having a conversation. He seems so much more focused, so much more positive. So I just wanted to say that there are some things have changed, and things are changing.
And there are some amazing things that go on in our county every day, and sometimes that kind of gets fought, particularly, you know, in terms of some fantastic lives that are turned around, lives saved. Sadly, you kind of only ever, as Nikki frequently reminds me, trying to prove that something didn't happen sometimes is a challenge. You only hear when it kind of goes wrong, you know.
I'd like to pull this to a close. I think Councillor Carr, you did have your hand up. Just quickly.
Well, I was going to propose we move the report, Madam Chair.
That is very good idea. That was what I was trying to draw to. So if and we don't usually do proposal and seconder, do we? But if I'll just pass to James for a minute.
Thank you, Chair. So this is obviously an opportunity for the panel to scrutinise the draft report that the Commission has produced, reflecting the panel's role of scrutinising and supporting the Commissioner. Opportunity for the panel to make any comments, recommendations about the draft reports that it wishes to do. If the proposal is that the panel supports, endorses, welcomes the report, then that's a perfectly valid outcome.
I think from what I've heard, I would say, the panel does endorse the report. Thanks for all the hard work that's gone into it, and really likes the sort of the thrust of it, the whole sort of impetus towards prevention and collaboration and trying to all work together to solve problems. So I think, if you pick up some of the points that have been made, that could go into the report because they're obviously all very valid. But if that's okay, then we will, accept the report and thank you very much for that.
I'll just say thank you. And obviously I don't produce these things alone. I'd love to tell you I'm a gifted writer and graphic designer, and that's obviously not true. I would particularly like to thank my team, police, fire, and everyone, and yourselves, and everyone who's kind of taken the time to help us thinking. We'll now get on with delivering it.
Yeah. So with delivery in mind, the next item on the agenda is the fire rescue plan delivery update. So if we can go on to that, please.
Okay. Madam Chairman, despite the ongoing challenges that COVID-19 pandemic presents us, today's report sets out the increasing work delivered by the Fire and Rescue Service, with a fourfold increase in activity like home safety visits being delivered, school visits restarted, fire safety inspection, as well as an attendance at high profile community events. This work, alongside proactive activities such as the HMO pilot scheme and providing fire safety advice to new students, helps to extend the ways that they work and keep our communities across the county safe. The report sets out the underlying benefits of the closer working between the force and the Fire and Rescue Service. For example, the co-location of Derby House has supported closer collaboration across the performance teams. This has included the recent purchase of a joint demographic system, which will provide both services with rich source of demographic data, which support targeting vulnerable members of the community. In addition to the new joint arson reduction service strategy, which has been produced, which will be supported by a joint delivery plan, which will be actively monitored. These developments highlight the deepening collaboration between the two services, which we further enhanced under your now approved police, fire and crime plan, and also the savings already being realised through enabling services function, demonstrating the benefits of this closer way of working, which will help to free up much needed resources that can be reinvested into the front line. As ever, happy to take any questions. I think some have already put some of them forward. But anyway.
I'd like to just, say the usually scribble little notes, but mine are all ticks of saying what very good actions, especially as you mentioned the students, first time away from home, and I'm sure fire isn't one thing they've come across, and the well-being dog. Absolutely excellent idea, and of course you're enabling services and bringing everything together. So I think very, very, very positive. I saw a couple of hands flying up, but Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I have to say, first of all, that you've actually now purchased the fire appliances, which now go up to, they're actually working now, go up in flats. That's correct, isn't it?
No, I've got four. I've started the procurement for the high. We already had 2 high-rise ones. We have placed an order for the one, and my 4 new fire engines of the 8 sadly won't be delivered until next month, not this month, because actually I think it was component parts. Ironically, the fun we're having with some of the logistics pipelines is providing us with challenges. I think we were having trouble with tyres this week.
I think that's a general problem. Councillor Carr.
Yes, Stephen, I just want to commend you really for obviously the work that you've been doing with the students about the first time they've been living away from home. Having experienced that myself, I left home only recently. It hasn't been that long ago. I was lucky. I left home when I was 16, I hasten to add, but it was a little bit different for me. And I went to university when I was 18, and all I can remember is I think every day the fire alarms would go off because people hadn't experienced. I mean, I can even remember saying to somebody who lived in my flat, "You're going to wash that grill after?" Well, I don't wash it at home. It's sometimes the most basic things that we know can sometimes cause fires. So I really commend you for doing that with the students. And as you said, there's so many things which do.
I will say thank you, but I quite often I might lead the strategic direction. I don't do these things personally, but I was at the fire service for the great work.
But thank
I'd
you
like
to
to take
them.
the glory, yes.
But thank you to them for doing it with these new students who are settling into their new lives. So yeah.
And it's probably worth in conjunction, I'm crossing into fire, but the bid that we won with the West Authority, over £500,000 as part of the Safer Streets, actually to also make them safer in the community. So actually, and these are things, it's actually, this is a good example of some joined up stuff, isn't it? We've got the university paying from additionality in terms of extra police officers to keep them safe, to stop drugs being run on campus, also working in conjunction with the local authority to make sure that they are a benefit to the nighttime economy and they can get home safely. These are some kind of good examples of kind of a simple working together, but provide some genuine benefit to everybody.
A supplementary question, if I may. Just going back to this idea with cadets, which we spoke about earlier, is there some, I mean, I can remember at university, there's so many clubs you could belong to. Is there some scope with doing something like that with the students? I'll leave you with that thought. I don't expect an answer, Stephen.
I don't know. I will explore. Let's put it that way.
We would try to be conned to go into things like officers training corps and things like the TA and things like that. But it did grab quite a few people at the time. It's just something that I'm not aware that any university does. So. Just a thought.
I mean, we obviously the Northampton University is the one we develop in terms of. So we actually have quite a lot of police officers going through training or as part of the degree program there. Chief's working very carefully with them to make sure things. I'll add it to his thinking.
Okay, Councillor Roberts next.
Well, very simply put, I'm quite proud of this report. And I'll put simply, I think it's showing and increasingly shows the amazing improvements that are going on, and in the thinking of what we're doing. And I've always been a team player, and I love the fact that we are really getting into the team stuff now. I do like the idea of having some outreach to the local university. I really do, but I just wanted to say that I do find this plan very positive indeed.
Okay, Councillor Stratton.
Thank you, Chairman. What really impressed me, you can see I'm old-fashioned in terms of fire and rescue, is the response time. Absolutely marvelous, and congratulations to the team.
Yeah, certainly the response rates, page 109 of appliance availability are really good news, and I think that's obviously the main measure for a fire
And,
service.
let's be clear, it's not within it as our recent one. It continues to. Please don't tell us. It really is a good news story, but also it shows you the. We'll be testing that as part of the HMRC as they kind of dig under it. But actually, they're even managing to try to maintain it despite the pandemic, despite the absenteeism. And absenteeism not the right word. Abstract. That people are having to self-isolate and some of those things doesn't make it easier. I mean, for instance, we had one watch in Kettering as they signed down, they did the whole watch had to go home because in terms of COVID. So it's not without its challenges, but kind of making it a focus. Thank you, Councillor Roberts. I also think we should be, I can formally thank our MPs and everyone's help to lobby. We've just, I can say this now, can't I? We knew it. I'm very proud to say that through the work of Northamptonshire, supported by our MPs in Buckinghamshire, that the lower quartile of fire services in the country will have the latitude for the £5 that we sought for last year. We are still expecting some others. I suppose in some ways that not the final part of the jigsaw, but from a financial point of view, that probably is the final bit that says we will have achieved our goal of financial stability. That will actually put the service on it and make sure that it's sustainable for coming years. And we can now very firmly now say that the holes in the boat have been fixed. There's still welfare facilities and other things that we're working our way through. But now it's time to sail the boat to new waters on the journey of kind of genuine kind of transformation and kind of evolution, but we start from a very sound financial. And I would formally like to thank Darren and his team, everyone in the Fire and Rescue Service for the kind of great work that they've done during the pandemic. Not only have they kind of done their day jobs in terms of also supporting kind of ambulance and stuff like that, and some very kind of challenging bit, and God forbid where they even supported to drive bodies to the morgue as part of the kind of pandemic response, and in terms of kind of, as you see, in terms of pump availability.
Mrs. Shields.
Yeah, Commissioner, I'm looking in...
Mrs. Shields, just for everyone external.
Sorry about that. Keep doing it. Forget. Yes, I'm impressed with your new joint venture with the police and fire regarding arson reduction strategy. Because of what you've said earlier on about the performance data highlighted a spike in deliberate fire, would that also include communicated with the youth worker for the purpose of communicating with the community, that they may know some of these young children or perhaps even adults who are into the problem of performing those spike fire.
Thank you. Yes, they are all kind of working together, as you mentioned there, in terms of the click app. One of the things by having kind of, like I said, the boring but important bit, by them having common data that they're able to use, joint demographic. The click is a kind of some infrastructure that we built from a policing point of view in terms of data visualization. Making sure they're all sharing the same data means you can identify some of these and work together. And Nikki funded some additional was it a post or more, but some funding for the prevention team to make sure we can kind of bring together some of these in conjunction with kind of a youth. So you'll see, particularly on some of those prevention, and that's probably the firefighters will always put out fires, police will always arrest people, but actually particularly in the prevention and kind of the enabling services are the two most obvious areas that you kind of see some of those things. I will be in the winter going off to Cornwall because they've been doing some amazing work where they've actually got tri-service. So actually they're first responders from an ambulance point of view, they're firefighters, and they are, I think they're actually PCSOs. So we'll also be looking at some of those, not for today, tomorrow, but actually as I use my analogy of taking the boat and sailing to new waters in terms of transformation. It's really, really very important that we go and look at that. You know, I'll also be going off to Wales. We'll be looking where in Wales have actually had joint control rooms for years, looking to see what we can do to learn in terms of some of those lessons to make sure that we continue the kind of evolution. This wasn't just about getting more money and doing the same things in the same way and hoping to get kind of different responses. You know, overall fires on a 10-year basis are kind of down from half of what they were. So actually the broadening of what the fire service kind of do to make sure that they kind of maintain the high esteem that the public hold them in is going to be kind of really important as we've said. But that needs to be in conjunction with, I don't want anything that's being done to them, that's in conjunction with.
Councillor Maxwell.
One of the things which is alarming at the moment is that whilst you used to have some involvement with building control within councils, it seems now that you don't have the same link between building control and development. So recently, I came across a pub that had been redeveloped, but the windows don't open. So if people go into the pub, you've only got one way in and one way out, the same going in and the same going out. And you can't climb through a window if they're not open. What worries me is that in building control, either they say it's the police job to actually deal with it, but if you're not aware of it, you know, aware of this new development, how are you supposed to know where the police become involved?
I don't know.
I thought it was police.
It's not police, it would be a fire. There is a bit around enforcement, there is some bits around. There was some, and I'm not an expert on the legislation, but perhaps if you give me the instance, we'll look into it and see what kind of lessons were. But there are actually, there is going to be a new government white paper on the fire service anyway, which we're expecting some would say even before Christmas. I'm not quite sure I believe that one myself. But actually there are some responsibilities about building control, and I know it's something HMRC is looking at. So because like I said, I was on the briefing for inspection. So there are some statutory obligations. I'd be interested in that instance to see whether what you're saying is genuinely true or a misinterpretation of the facts. But if you perhaps get me the details, look into that. Thanks.
It's probably a similar thing to the move that I've been pushing for many years, to have sprinklers built into buildings, especially schools, and it's one of the battles we haven't yet won. Sorry, Councillor Maxwell.
Can I just have a follow-up question? And so going back, because I'm quite concerned about the fact that I'm going to write about this pub to you, but what concerns me is this is a new development, and yet when I phoned up building control to say you can't get through the windows, well, that comes down to the police. So, you know, there needs to be some more joined up thinking. But my next thing is, one of the things that slightly worries me now, we've got a lot of new build now, houses being built. And I think that there should be more promotion whereby safety issues regarding fire within new homes should be part of the pack, you know, the do's and don'ts. And the people who build them should be equally more aware of safeguarding people, you know, from fire instances.
Well, if I can just comment, we've actually got on our schedule to have a session on things like the Kerslake and the various different fire regulations at Grenfell. And maybe that's something that could be brought in with it is a discussion, maybe a working group on ideas of how to promote fire safety and join it up with the building control. It sounds like a sort of general topic that might be quite useful to us to pursue at another time.
I am interested because I'm 99% certain it's not a policing issue. It probably is a fire issue, but I'll be interested since we'll follow that one up.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've had quite a good, very, very impressed with that report, and I don't think we've got any extra things that we need to pick up on that. So that is for noting, and thank you very much for that. And I think then we'll go on to the police and crime plan delivery update.
Madam Chairman, I shall hurry us along, else we shall run over again like we seem to kind of each time. I was endeavoured to keep my answers shorter. So, Madam Chairman, as panel members will see from today's report, a great deal of work continues to be delivered by the Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner to support me in the delivery of my priorities to make Northamptonshire safer. Our success in bidding for extra funding from the Home Office has helped to deliver real improvements across the county and protecting vulnerable residents. Our recently successful bid for a further £300,000 for the Safety of Women at Night Fund will be used in a series of projects to prevent violence in the nighttime economy in Northamptonshire and Kettering, and will include measures to target the perpetrators of harassment of violence directed at women. The funding will also will allow work to be carried out with the university to enhance safety for students and involvement in the development of activities that make women using the nighttime economy safer. We were all shocked by the tragic murder of Sever Everard, which refocused the safety of women, the PCC and the forces across the country. Last week saw the launch of the Snow Van, and I thank you for those that did it, or the Safer Nights Out Van, which is a customised minibus which will be staffed by vetted volunteers in the centre of Northampton from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. every Friday and Saturday, which can provide support and help keep people safe in our nighttime economy. The Snow Van is predominantly for women, but this is there to help anyone, whether someone has lost their phone, become separated from friends, or simply finds themselves in difficulty. The Snow Van helps them stay safe. During the first evening, the volunteers engage with over 100 people, ensure 6 people got the help they needed to get home, and reunited 3 people that had become separated from their friends. As we approach Christmas, this wonderful new asset will play a vital role in keeping people safe in enjoying their nights out. And actually, that's a good example. There's probably a benefit to A&E in terms of medical, in terms of some of these people going home, in terms of safety. So as you know, prevention is a key priority for me, and I'll do everything I can to make this county a safer place, with a particular focus on the safety of women and girls, and the financial support from the Home Office will help deliver this vital work. The breadth and the scope of the work of the early intervention team continues to deliver real dividends to families and vulnerable individuals across Northamptonshire. I can update you now that further by telling you the ACE team has now helped over 1,000, it's actually 1,009 families, with a total of 1,800 children and young people with our domestic abuse support officers have dealt with a further 833 incidents, which supports a further 1,492 children. And they were only launched last January. This work is helping to support those at risk of abuse and help to prevent vulnerable people from entering the criminal justice system by getting upstream. We can hopefully allow people to make positive life decisions and allow them to have a more positive and productive lives. Increased visibility is another key area of support, and positive feedback both from yourself today and I've already had in relation to the launch of the beat buses is very encouraging. This new initiative will boost police visibility and provide easier access to local officers in both towns and villages, as well as providing a useful focal point for community engagement and targeted police activity. By bringing the police closer to community serves, these new beat buses will be a great new tool to help strengthen trust and confidence in policing across Northamptonshire. Finally, Madam Chairman, I have to mention the excellent work MOF has undertaken in relation to the Safer Streets Fund, which we have now have successfully bid for nearly £3 million to deliver much needed support to areas that have been unfortunately blighted by crime and antisocial behaviour. As you'll see from the recent support, our recent bid will see us investing £432,000 to fight crime in Hemmingwell, providing home security products and safer doors and increased CCTV coverage. I'm proud of the work we've been able to deliver through Safer Streets, which demonstrates the value of targeted work in partnership with the force. There is a lot in today's report, and I'm happy to take any questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd like to highlight in particular the retail crime and the work with shoplifting, which I think is very much welcome, because at one point that was something that was not happening, and also the addressing of mental health issues and helping to put funding into that. So I particularly applaud those. I've got a question first from Councillor Maxwell.
Well, interestingly, the letter that I've just put there is from Priti Patel. And what I've done is I've been trying to get personal alarm systems for sixth formers, that's years 12 and 13. And that's right. So I have mentioned it to you before. So I decided to write directly to her to see if we could get some funding to actually bring it about. And Priti Patel has actually written back to say that there is some funding that we can access, but you need to do it yourself. So, but I think what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we can't just always rely on funding within the county. We've got to go out and find it elsewhere, because not everything can be funded via residents, and not all residents have money to actually fund it. And I think that we have to look at protection for women, particularly. You're talking about the university and about the bus, which I went to have a look at, which I thought was really good. I mean, obviously, I'd quite like a bus in our area, not just this area, to come across. But I think, you know, that's a question that we need to look at. I think one of the issues now is that more young people should rightly have freedom to go out in the evening. But like you said in your report, actually, that there is an increase in people being targeted and injected by various chemicals. So how is the police actually going to handle this spiking of young people when they go out into the community?
For you who visited me on the snow bus, there are some targeted operations that are being run, and I can't talk too much about it. I suppose I could just reassure you, I'm confident that the force has a robust plan on it. You notice there was also a national strategy that was kind of delivered in terms of policing yesterday and what they were doing. But let's just say we're working in conjunction with the licensing trade, met with them personally to discuss some of the things. We're looking at things around, can we bar, particularly some of those, anyone who's seen to harass, safer things, anyone stop people spiking, knife arches, undercover operations, we really are doing what we can to kind of make it difficult, but it would be inappropriate for comment on some of the tactics that are being deployed. But be assured, you know, on my first day in office, I was asked to address the force about what I saw as my vision for Northamptonshire Police. Hasn't changed. It's always very, very simple. At that time, my daughter was 3, and I said, it's really, really quite simple. You need it. You need to make it safe for her. I did joke at the time for her to go out when she's 30. But I said, your job is to get it down to actually, so when she's kind of 18 and every other young girl and young man to actually go about their business safely. Because actually, if you stand with it, if we want to have a vibrant, successful economy that people want to kind of come and live here, they can only do so on the basis that it's kind of safe. And actually, ultimately, that's the measure, and that's where we're all kind of working together to actually do it. And you know, as you were there on Stowbus, I was also challenging the council to say, you know, come on, you've got a fantastic market square. Let's get that cafe. You know, if you looked around it and you looked above, up, it could be anywhere. You know. Maybe some of the architecture isn't quite as beautiful as Bruges, some would say it is. I'm probably being controversial there, but actually, why couldn't you have that kind of economy in terms of people can go out safe and enjoy it? And that's one of the things behind the snow bus. Already the first thing has probably been so successful, other people are going to ask for me. I know the sector for the north has already asked me, where's his bus? I'm sure Councillor McGee is going to ask me the same in a minute. It is the first one. Is the trial. We will evaluate. If it's successful, we will roll it out further. I'd just like to answer it before you ask me.
Yeah, it was thought when we went to see it, which was fantastic. Yes.
You wouldn't want me to spend. You wouldn't want me to spend my money unwisely. So to do it, try it, prove it successful, and then roll it into other areas, wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely. Mrs. Shields.
Yes, I saw one of your solution to increase the referral. I'm referring here to better recovery from victimization for independent domestic violence advisors, Sunflower. Now, you had a fantastic increase of referral, 400 of them, which is an increase of 12.1%. And in order to ensure that the referral were being heard in a timely fashion, you've introduced additional meeting. So I'm looking at that solution that you've implemented. And then I'm looking into the problems that you have with various sections of the planned priority of voice, victim of witness, road harm, witness care, restorative justice, and child psychology service. It seemed that without going into respective detail, that you do have a high number of customer or complainant coming forward, but the sheer numbers of cases is not being followed as fast as it should be. And I'm wondering, I know that the impact of COVID would have had an impact for seeing face to face, but perhaps other methods could be introduced, such as if those obviously individual have IT, Zoom, or not telephone, or a mobile phone, or even a letter. Perhaps you can highlight to me what is your strategy for tackling those issues?
I haven't got the section in front of me you're referring to, so I will talk in the kind of the broader sense. First of all, there continues to be something that probably one of the things that concerns me most right now, and there's a lot that keeps me awake. But one of them, it really does, and I hate this word, but it's the kind of thing, is victim and witness attrition. We have quite a backlog that's currently occurring in the kind of criminal justice system. As a consequence of kind of the delay, you've kind of got potentially this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that where there's a slight delay, I'm not blaming him for it, the defence community from from a barrister perspective, advising their clients to plead not guilty. So one of the key measures you look at is pleading guilty at kind of first hearing, which is dependent on kind of the evidence and the kind of positive outcome of which Northamptonshire Police, with its investment in its digital evidence management system that came online last month, and also the easier to share in terms of delivered body video evidence and stuff like that. And I know of a case recently where the judge had said that they actually genuinely thought the person was going to get away with it because of some stereotypes and myths were there, but actually the body of worn video camera changed the perspective of the jury. So there is an important part here in making sure that we provide, Northamptonshire Police needs to play its part. And I am pleased that the government put significant investment into doing that, because actually you need kind of more court recorders and some of these sorts of things. Because what happens is, if there's this perception there's going to be a delay, and there's a delay of getting a case to court, well, if you're a woman that gets on with your life, whether it be DV, sexual assault or something like that, you don't want to relive that trauma years down the line. It needs to be done, and there are some positive things being done about recording it there and then, so it's kind of, if you like, taken, put in a box and then displayed at that kind of moment in time. But that is a very real risk, because then they plead not guilty in the hope that they won't get a prosecution. And for me, I actually think there needs to be a counter to that. If it's late and it takes, and they do get it, I think they should get a higher tariff rather than think, because actually, by the more of them do it, it overloads the system and makes the backlog longer, and probably makes the whole thing thing. And then of course that then becomes a bit that, quite right, some people are going, I don't want to relive this years later. I want to kind of get on with my life and heal. And actually that's also why it's important that the voice is separate from a prosecution point of view, because actually we need to support them whatever decision we make, which is also, for those of you who have visited Voice, we provide free of charge the housing of rape crisis, so I can support women in that respect. But actually that's probably the ones that's most there. So in addition to that, I also want to make sure that we provide the very best service we can, and that money is spent at the front line. So we also have commissioned a report to look at Voice, not because I think Voice is doing anything wrong, but actually how can it be even better at what it does, and how better can we support it. So we're also looking at that. So there needs to be this continual process that we're looking everything we do to make sure that we're doing it. So there is a bit about making sure that, and some of the stuff in terms of the ISVA, the kind of mental health and the trauma, and supporting some of those people. It would probably also be timely, and my little moan if I get out there, and Nick is trying to kind of sort this one out. The Sunflower, which is a service that we all fund in conjunction with the local councils, the funding for it was agreed to be increased by the Shadow Authority. That hasn't actually happened, because actually they've gone, well, we're going to hold our expenditures what it was, rather than take kind of any inflationary. So I am stepping up for the additional, because actually I think it's that important that we do it. It's very important that we have a sensible story about what their obligations and what ours are, and that are appropriately funded in terms of support for women. So it's kind of a complex area that more can be done. I'm not saying anyone's at fault of that. I think it's as a part in terms of the transition and getting to sort some of those things out.
What I was going to add to that, you just mentioned the guilty plea rate on swift and sure justice. Now, one of the things that you've indicated is that there is not enough material and evidence that is being collated by the officer, and therefore what you come to the magistrate court, and then they refute those cases because there is not enough material evidence. Do you think on the numbers of recruitment that you have made on police officer, do you have enough detectives who have got the qualification for putting forward solid cases, so like that you have a greater chance of having your guilty plea rate increase? Thank you.
I think what's referring to, and I've got the piece in, I'm not looking at the bit that you're mentioning, there's kind of two parts of that. One, we have had one of the things that was identified in a HMIC report several years ago, that we hadn't got enough kind of qualified detectives. They've just come back recently in part of the recent HMIC report, which one of the areas is identified as good because significant progress has been made in that. And some of our direct entries are really making an impact on that. Do I think that we're where we want to be yet? No, not quite. I think what some of the bit they're kind of referring in there is, you know, domestic violence is a complex issue. And the reason it is whilst there might be abuse, quite often the situation is the person still loves the other person. And there obviously are different degrees. You know, I mentioned sunflower, which is the high risk, but there is ones that just, you know, there can be arguments just as a consequence of everyday life, you know, in terms of, you know, you've got a pandemic, people in there, stuck in households, monetary worries, inflation, you know, interest rates have gone up today. All of those kind of boil up in terms of some of those. And there are kind of different degrees of bits that might or might not be. So there is also a bit where people choose not to go forward with a prosecution. And so actually it's quite simply can be, and we try to also push the force that if we genuinely have got those at the higher end, that we will go, you know, victim-less prosecutions, witness-less prosecutions that will still proceed on that basis. So I want to make sure they continue the pressure up in that. So actually where you've got evidence, and that's where the body-worn video somewhere. So it's for me, it's slightly less about the capability of the detective, because that's certainly an area I've been focused on and doing it. And ironically, myself and Nikki had a chat with the specialist rape team at CPS, and they were actually saying what a fantastic progress Northamptonshire Police had made as a consequence of investigated of a dedicated team to support. And there is that bit about actually, it's that in terms of the language you use and the things like that. And I have some challenges for the force around this thing called Bluestone, which is kind of some best practice, which I think has come from something in Europe, and it's got a fancy name that's gone out of my head right now. I want to look how we raise that bar further, because at the end of the day, you know, if you're not guilty, we want to get you off and not guilty sooner. But if you're guilty, you need to feel justice sooner, and that will then, in turn, give women continuing more confidence to push some of those things forward.
If I can just follow up on the topic of backlogs, obviously you presumably sort of analysed very closely the Peel report, and they said that they thought there ought to be more investment in digital capability because there's a backlog of looking at devices, and I think you referred to it a little bit earlier on, and obviously that's delaying bringing things to justice if the computers, etc., that need to be investigated. Is there a move to put extra resources into that?
The chief wouldn't thank me if I didn't highlight that he was frustrated by the HMIC FRS report, because some of the things that had been implemented didn't get reflected in it, and we've made some quite significant investment and have further to make on that, particularly in terms of digital capability. Quite frankly, this will be core business going forward. 90% of every investigation has some form of digital footprint. It's an area that we will only continue to invest in and grow. You know, you only need to see some of the success for those who didn't see it. The second largest drug bust in the United Kingdom ever was as a consequence of our investigation, our investment in both technology fused with that proactive response to a message from the public, and the combination of the two together led to the biggest drug bust in Northamptonshire. 78 million in its current value, turning street value, £200 million. And what really terrified me is actually how small it was. You know, you very easily, it kind of sat in the back, it could easily sit in the back of a 4x4. You know, when you actually think I picked up a brick of it that was kind of a bit bigger than that, about £120,000. You know, that was a significant, I mean, I don't mind telling you that was a sleepless weekend, because you're kind of knowing where it is. that's the kind of amount that somebody with guns is going to kind of take that back, because that's a significant loss. Second biggest bust in history. Now, you know, I know a lot of people kind of go, what are you doing about that's stopped a lot. The only problem is the price of cocaine has probably shot up this Christmas, because which might in itself lead to violence. So it is a complicated sort of situation.
Okay, Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions from the report. The first one, Councillor Maxwell picked up on, but I think as someone that frequents the nighttime economy quite a lot, I think both in Northamptonshire, Corby, Kettering and across the country really, I think I'll say that the events, including the injection spiking, was harrowing to me. To think that that could have been my friends, anyone that I know, my little sister, is really scary, really scary. Especially because there's nothing wrong with going out. There's nothing wrong with having a good time. There's nothing, so it does make you wonder. So my experience down in Brighton, where I went to uni, was very different to clubs in Northamptonshire and in Kettering in particular. They would have metal detectors on the doors. They would have lights for your ID, so they would put your ID on the light to check that it was right. They would also have an Ask Angela sticker, and everywhere you went would have the Angela scheme, where you would just say to the barman, Angela, and they'd be able to get you out in a taxi safe and home. There doesn't seem to be a lot of that in here, and I was quite naive to that. I obviously lived in Brighton and went down there, and Nottingham and places like that all have these kinds of initiatives. There's not a lot of it.
I was thinking you was listening to the meeting I had with the publicans. The thing is, because all of those were actually on the agenda.
Yeah,
we're talking about.
I did have a conversation.
And I think you also had a response to, you wrote to me.
Yeah.
You got some insight on some of the stuff that's in train.
So what sort of authority do we have over pub watch and people participating in pub watch and people coming together to do these kinds of forms of best practice? What kind of authority does the police have to enforce those kind of things? Is my first question.
Pub watch is a voluntary scheme. It's not something you can make someone join, but actually it's quite well supported. And the meeting I had in Northampton, I think there was at least, I'm going to say 30, it might even have been 40 that we were kind of talking about. We're talking about what we could do to actually to enhance what they were doing, and that might be in terms of, as you mentioned there, in terms of making sure ID is valid, also making sure that then people could potentially put on kind of block lists, but we absolutely have no authority whatsoever. We have as part of the operation I mentioned, put in place some knife arches that are available in terms of metal detectors. We're also looking at some schemes around, should we buy some of those sorts of things ourselves to kind of enable. So we are working in conjunction with, if you know what I mean, but we don't have any authority on that.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay,
If I can just add on that, Councillor McGee, that the council, certainly when I was on the district council, worked very closely with the licensing departments with the like Pub Watch and various organisations like that. So I think that might be the sort of pitch, you know, to go to at the council to try and get them to work. You know, and encourage these initiatives.
And I make this offer, if Councillor McGee, please don't be offended by what I'm saying. The rest of you is our youngest member. I'm happy to make sure that, you know, maybe a visit with the licensing team to see firsthand some of the work, and you maybe in conjunction might be some insights you can provide for each other will be helpful.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, and thank you. I'm just obviously learning and getting to grips and trying to ask the right questions to the right people as well is really important. I also have a quick question about the Safer Streets initiative, which is really, really brilliant, and the organisation I work for has tapped into it, and also have the Kingswood Youth Club as well. But my concern with it is its longevity. A lot of people are disillusioned and distrusting, and the detached youth workers are actually being funded by the Safer Streets Fund at the moment, but it only funds for a year, and then they've been told that they cannot reapply for the same project twice, which is really disappointing for the youth workers who you don't solve and build relationships in a year. It takes a lot longer than that. And these ladies have given up their jobs to go out and do this for very little money go out and do this and get to grips with these people and give up their time for the sake of a year. And actually, and this isn't really on you, I've taken this up with the people who it is on, but it might be worth you kicking the hammer in just to let them know. They can't even run the detached youth work service at the moment because it's too blooming dark. And it's not safe for them to go out on the streets in the pitch black. So they can't do it. They've got this money to be able to do that and they can't do it. And once they can do it, when it's light again, they'll have, 6 months till it gets dark again and their funding will be gone. So I think it's I understand this system, and I work in funding myself, so I know it's rigid and you have to be careful who you support and what you do with it, but it doesn't create trust in the community.
Perennial problem, I think.
I don't think you'll find they're being funded by Safer Streets. I think we fund them as part of our community fund. I'm happy for, what I'll do is we'll arrange for someone to give you a call and we'll actually pick that one kind of up separately. Maybe there's a bit, and you know what, but that is also the challenging in terms of where does detached youth work sit? You know, is it one of the reasons I've put my money where my mouth is because it's really important to me, and I do it. In fairness, it's actually it's more of a council one, and Nikki's done a lot of work to make sure it kind of in conjunction with. But we'll have a look at it. I think we just was it Linwood or something? Someone else we've just funded another one for anyway. But I was just saying we'll pick. Yeah, I think I was just saying. So I'm trying.
It's not to say that it's not, it's just that the situation in Kingswood and Hazeldees, whilst everyone's sort of sitting around and saying that they've seen good practice and things are getting better. Unfortunately, from not just in Kingswood and Hazeldees, actually, from the levelling up walkabouts I've done in both Wellingborough and Avondale Grange, the situation is not getting better. There are kids with knives on the streets. There are kids with these gun things that fire metal bullets that could do some serious damage. So as much as I appreciate we're sharing best practice and it's really important to be grateful for the resources that are getting put in, actually the feedback that I'm getting from the work that I'm doing is that the situation is not getting better.
Well, one of the things that we're looking to do is, Safer Streets have tended to be bigger projects in bigger areas. And one of with your MP, Tom, we recognise that some of the challenges coming around Corby. So we're looking at a thing as part of this budgetary process in terms of, if you like, I'm going to call it Safer Streets Light, where we put some money aside for probably some smaller projects that we can do in conjunction. So I'll arrange for perhaps for Paul to meet with you, and we'll have a look at some other bits of it. So I am genuinely alive to it, and Corby, if you like, your MP's reached out to us as well. We're alive to it anyway. So in conjunction with, if you like, the three of us, if you like, we'll see what we can do about it.
Yeah, and the levelling up committee as well. Because I'll just make it clear that it's not just a Corby issue. This is all over the county, and particularly the levelling up areas are the areas that I'm advocating for. But it happens everywhere.
Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I'm interested to hear what you said about pubs, actually. I sit on licensing, actually. So one of the things we do actually make sure is that if a license comes up because they've actually done something wrong, which is why they do come to us, we are very clear with them about what they can do and what they can't do. And if they lose their license, you'll be pleased to know that they can't operate for 5 years. So it is quite stringent. I mean, maybe in some aspects, the spiking which is going on at the moment and people not feeling safe going into pubs is something that with the police, the training could be perhaps a bit more geared to them. And it's something with a new authority, maybe that's something we could actually look at, whereby when you take on a license, you know what you can do and what you can't do. At the moment, we get licensees who feel that they can bypass the police and do what they want. And then when they do get caught, obviously, they then find that their license is gone. So I think it is out, things are happening. It's just that we don't report it off for obvious reasons because it's confidential, some aspects of it. But we do work very hard. with the police?
I'm happy to facilitate a meeting between the council and police and crime plan.
Obviously, we really pleased about the extra numbers of police coming on, but I was quite surprised and disturbed to see in the Peel report that we have a 42% attrition rate of officers leaving, which is much higher than the average nationally of 28.3. And I wondered what the Commissioner was sort of pushing the Chief Constable to do to prevent that attrition, maybe put in training programs or other things that could help to keep these officers and not have them leave.
There's two parts of that. As the report is a moment in time, and the chief wouldn't appreciate if I didn't again remind you that sometimes he would contest the veracity of some of the elements of it. However, I know that not this last year, but the year before, there was some challenges where we had a greater thing in it. That was a moment in time. I've got a report that confirms that that's not the case now, and some of that is, I think, part of the finding its feet of some of the PEQF in terms of some of the by the very nature of it, in terms of the apprenticeship thing, it's kind of lowered the age, and so as a consequence there was a kind of greater churn. That seems to be in a launch program. We don't know it was part of the recruitment or whatever, but that's not the case right now.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, but certainly good training programs, are absolutely essential to help. Certainly with the things that we've been mentioning. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chair. I think part of the problem we have in Northampton is the Met. There is extra money to be had working in the Met, and then the police they get free travel. This is my understanding. I was speaking to one particular officer who lives in Colwyn Road. His mother also lives in Colwyn Road, and the mother was explaining to me how it is very convenient for them to use this free travel and get all the benefits from the Met. So that's one of the reasons that we here in Northampton struggles a bit to hang on to some of our officers after 4 or 5 years with us. I'm hoping, Commissioner, that this is something that you're aware of.
Very much so. So actually, it was in our conversation at the Home Office. Was that, and it's a problem. So actually, and you know, as a council, you've seen it on social workers. So what happens is, Luton had a problem, so it raises its salary. It draws them down from Milton Keynes. So Milton Keynes raises it draws them down from Northampton, and before you know it, we're all thinking we had already raised we started at the pay point above, which is 20 something thousand. I've got the exact number. I haven't got the exact number in front of me, so I want to misquote it. Let's say, to give some idea of thing, let's say we start at 24. So we've raised ours to stop the kind of attrition rate and the associate costs that come with it. But the Met then raised its to 30. And Councillor Strachan is quite correct. What happens is, if you're a warrant card holding police officer, you get free train travel on particular, I think it's London Midland. Well, so actually, if you're working long hours anyway, what's a little bit longer on the end of your day by train to do it? So our proximity to London has many an impact, not just on our staff. And these were some of the points we were making with the Home Office. But of course, it also, the other side is, of course, it's easier if you're stuck between Birmingham and London. What a great place to stop off and do sell some extra drugs and stuff like that. So actually, our great strength, if you like, for our economy is our proximity to some of these and our fantastic road network, which is probably hence, no offence, I've no reason to believe that 78 or 200 million pounds worth of cocaine was just for Northamptonshire. It's because it's a great place to bring it, run it and distribute it, because actually that's what we do across a lot of those things. So it is a challenge. The primary one they were referring to, I think, was actually related to dropout for the recruitment on the new PEQF, but there is one. But also it's worth saying we are working with West on a project called the Clock Tower, which is I think it's a disused office block currently behind the Grosvenor Centre, which is going to be turned into apartments. And they want to make those available for emergency service workers, so nursing, police, fire. So I'm guaranteeing, in conjunction with them, some of the buildings. But one of the conditions you're pleased to know is they need to be serving in Northamptonshire. What I really don't want to do is do that in conjunction with them and actually provide them with a building that's not far from the train station, where they get cheap thing and whatever. I want to use it to attract people to Northampton and not. So we are alive to this and working on some things to make sure we retain, because you know we want to retain the talent that we've invested in and train.
Thank you. Well, I think if we'd like to draw to close, so final word from Councillor Maxwell.
Well, it's just two things, actually. You were talking about the police, but one of the things that some police force do, they're very good at the Bay, how they look after the police. I'm not saying we don't do that here. So if they have challenging situations, the follow-up is very good. My question actually to you is, given that HMP 5 Wells is coming up, what involvement is that going to have on yourself from a police point of view?
I think the first thing I would take this to commend the team at HMP 5 Wells for their engagement. One of the things we're working with them, I actually think done properly, and I like the governor's ambition to be the. I think MOJ wanted to be the best prison in Europe. He said, "I'm not sure I can comment on Europe, but I'm happy to have the target of being the best prison in the UK. They've got some stuff that we need to work in conjunction with. You know, you've talked about kind of youth, some of the youth that are actually, there is even an offer from them of making sure that, you know, they'll provide some inmates to demonstrate that, you know what, this is where it's going to end up if you don't kind of carry on. So that we are working in conjunction with them. There is some work to be done in terms of, you know, they're going to be holding something like, I think it's 1,600 plus prisoners. They start taking them from February of next year, so not far away. They've got their team. I mean, they did have, I don't know if you went, they had some open sessions where people could kind of go and see it. I've got to be honest, I've stayed in worse hotels than they've got there right now, a lot worse. But actually it is deliberately designed to be a prison that drives rehabilitation and make sure that kind of people coming out are of you know, contribute to society, not the other way around. So at this moment, as a start in their team, I would only commend them for their outreach to us, and we're working in conjunction. And actually, I would encourage other partners to work out. And I do remember seeing some councillors there for the bit that I was there.
Well, thank you very much. And we will note your report and congratulate you on the work that you've been doing, and with some, we'll see, caveats where you're still working on it. If we can move on to the fire financial update and forecast outturn.
Madam Chairman, as you can see from today's budget report, provides you at a high level a financial update on the 2021 provision outcome, as well as the forecasted for the period of 1st of April to 21 to 31st of March 22. As you know, the future holds a number of challenges for us as a tight financial environment in which the Fire and Rescue Service operates, and the numerous legacy issues we inherited. However, we continue to work closely with parliamentary colleagues and the Home Office to highlight the pressures we have. And as the £5 that I mentioned earlier actually highlights I think we can be justifiably proud of the progress we've made there. Obviously, we take nothing for granted because we also have we have had some very positive conversations that potentially I think we're writing that letter after this bit, aren't we? Ready for me to sign, which is another, I'm very good at begging letters to the Home Office to get some more money, particularly for the capital programme. And that's particularly relevant because of the financial challenge we inherited and the kind of updating of equipment to make sure it's kind of fit for purpose. The Home Office have given us warm words that they might hopefully share some funds with. I don't know. I'm being broadcast. I don't want to share too much, but I think we're confident that in as much as they can support us, they will when we write that letter. I'm happy to take any questions or pass as many of them to Helen as I can.
Councillor Maxwell.
Well, actually, I think I was interested to read about this. I would like to know, what interested me was that the amount of money which is spent on personal equipment for the actual fire people, and also the pensions, which, you know, we're talking about people's pay, and do people, when they join the fire service, are they actually protected? So do you actually factor that in, the pensions of the people who may unfortunately find themselves injured as a result of what they actually do? Is that factored in?
I'm not sure how long we've got on, but if we want to get into pensions today, we could be here all day, couldn't we, Mrs. King? They have a very good firefighter pension, yes, which takes account of those sorts of things, I think is the best way I could put it.
Sorry. I was a bit quiet, was I?
I did.
Yes, both fire and police have a very good unfunded pension scheme, which does provide for injury and all of those elements as well.
Sorry.
I see you also fund shoes, actually, is that correct?
We would fund the necessary footwear that a firefighter needs to do their job. So yes, boots, there would be certain types of protective equipment that is required for a firefighter. So of course we would fund those.
I think with regards pensions, on page 147 at 6.6, that's one of the issues really, the fact that the 3-year settlement or spending review doesn't talk about the potential impact of the pensions, and that's rather a sticky subject, you know, especially if wages are going up and your funding's going up sort of only just in relation to that, then pensions having to be paid out as well, obviously is a big spend sort of threshold.
I'm not going to say too much on pensions because it's a complicated and emotive. Any pension, as Helen said, it's an unfunded and is normally paid directly from the Home Office if you're through on a kind of a pass-through basis. The Cloud Sergeant thing has, and then there's basically, I won't bore you with exact details, but basically there's a thing called immediate detriment. I think is the two words we hear most a lot at the moment, isn't it, Mrs. King? Around the deficiency between one scheme and everything in basically the government cost lost in court. With it was, they said it was, I don't know, but basically it was ageist. I think is in its simplest form. We're waiting for some legislation. I don't think we'll see expected next year in 2023 to provide guidance so that we can do some stuff around level. We genuinely want to make sure that anything that is due to anyone on the police or fire side that is due to them we pay appropriately, but we're just waiting for that guidance and the legislation that needs to be passed in to enable us to do some of those things.
Councillor Maxwell.
I think that maybe that's quite worrying really, because if you want to keep the workforce, one of the things could be that they will get an attractive pension somewhere else rather than stay in the fire service. Do you not think so?
It's not for you or I to get into what the pension, but I would probably say, as someone who signs the checks for pensions, they are good settlements when you compare them to other outfits. Now, do I think that's appropriate? Probably yes, given the risk and some of the things that they take. I don't want to misthinking, but I suppose when you actually get into the numbers, at some point, all this pensions genuinely, and I'm not specifically around the police department, need sorting out. It's a nub at some point that actually, if we're not careful, the contributions that we need to make in terms of our operational budget to fund some of these things is quite large. I mean, actually, the amount of money that we pay in, I think, policing is, I don't think it's not long short of something like 20 million, is it? In terms of contributions, you think of the budget, and actually there is talk of potentially it being 30% of people's fire budgets in the future. So that there's these sorts of things need sorting out. But absolutely.
Mrs. Shields, did you?
Yeah. My question is to Helen. Yes, as you know, the inflation at the moment is going nearly 6%. Now I'm looking on your comment. If precept and grant increase by an average of 1.9% each year of the SR period, this will still be far below the average of 4% inflation expected. So that means your proposed settlement will be much more increased than reducing the funding gap.
That is true. I will also say that I did write this report and that section before we had the provisional settlement today. So the opportunity for the £5 precept flexibility for the Commissioner will make a big difference now to that position. I've just looked at the fire figures as well, that the provisional settlement, I'm sorry, Stephen, I haven't told you yet, for fire whilst we've been in this meeting, and they are broadly in line with what I was thinking. Tiny little bit better, which is great, but broadly, every little has helped, but broadly in line, it's slightly better. So the big difference is the £5 precept flexibility. But yes, inflation is a challenge for us, Mr. Shields.
And we would ask you to bear that in mind when I sit before you proposing any precept decision that I haven't made yet in the new year, when I've fully digested all of those numbers. But again, all of these things have to be balanced against the fact that the hard-working taxpayers out there who need to pay this and with their own strain. And that'll be the joyous thoughts that I've got to consider over Christmas and the consultation that we should launch next week.
Thank you.
Okay, any other? Oh, Councillor I know she said it. She was all right. No. Councillor Strachan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to say, going back to firefighters' safety equipment, I want to know and to see that our firefighters have the very best available safety equipment, because I've seen some of the training, and that was only training. And from what I've seen, we need to make sure that those individuals are protected in every which way possible. That's all I want to say about fire safety equipment, regardless of the cost, really.
I agree that we need to equip them, and I'm not aware of anything. One of the things we have done, we've moved to a as you know, new equipment, new safety stuff to make sure they're provided. If you're aware of any deficiencies that someone should, I don't have a problem from a principal point of view. Sadly, I don't have the luxury of saying at whatever the cost, because it's no good with me, ironically, because their new uniforms are gold, but gold-plated uniforms and no engines to ride to the thingy on. So I remain committed to firefighter safety. And I, like I said, if anyone's aware of anything that's of concern, please bring it to my attention.
I'm not, that was raised earlier. I just want to make that clear. Going down the planet. What I want.
Well, I think the government has obviously acknowledged that the model that we have here is, I think they're probably going to roll it out in the whole country. So I think we've been a pilot and a good example. So I think, it's really shown that this model can work, and certainly this fire sort of the precept, the update has shown that despite the fact that we are one of the lowest funded in the country, we're still managing to run a good service. So, sorry, Mrs. Shields.
Yeah. I was going to ask Commissioner O'Helen, this is to do with the cladding. Now, from your note, it's stipulate that the country, I suppose, will receive 5 billion funding for remediation. Do we know if this kind of remediation already started in Northampton for those buildings that need to have remediation?
The 5 billion isn't coming to the fire service, to be clear, and it's not their job to rectify it. There was some, and I will try and get this right. There was some thing in the paper, particularly with the New Life building, and it was more to do with where they're going to, which they are resolving, and it wasn't to do with the cladding. I think it was the rendering on the cladding or something. If I'm yeah, which they are proceeding with. They're the only high rise that poses a kind of an issue for us. My one has been, and we don't have the same kind of profile in that respect, as you'll see, which is the reason we're doing the trial. I think HMOs offer a greater risk here in Northamptonshire than anything to do with thing. So actually, and I don't mean this how it sounds, there are valuable lessons that will be learned from Grenfell. Less of them are applicable to us. It's important that we look at our risk and our risk profile. And I believe HMOs offer us a higher risk profile in this county than anything else right now.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions on that report, thank you for that, and we note that, and we move on to the police. Let's turn my page. The right thing. Policing budget update.
Before I go into that, someone did a quick bit, because I was slightly worried about the percentages you quoted, Madam Chairman, early on. So I just got someone to do a quick piece of work for me while I'm sat here, because I think you said that you were worried that was a 46%. 42. It was 42 of 46 that resigned before their due retirement age, not. So it's 42 of the 46, not of the totality of thing. So I don't want somebody thinking we recruited 500 and we lost 250. So I just want to make say 42% of 46. So you're talking about, what's that, 20 or something?
Right.
And that's before their due retirement age, not. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all in terms of new recruits. Yeah. And actually, getting into pensions attractive, an alternative thing is, yes, one up. So anyway, Madam Chairman, as you can see, the report provides you with a financial update on the financial forecast outturn for the period ending the 1st of April 21 to 31st of March 22. And gives you more information regarding the future financial considerations and challenges for policing in Northamptonshire. There's currently a forecasted underspend of 733,000, which is composed of a forecast £768,000 underspend on just the PFCC managed budget and the forecast overspend of 35k for the force. If there is an underspend at year end, I will consider a number of options, which may include increasing revenue contributions to capital cost, thus reducing capital financing cost or supporting investment or one-off pressures in future years. As we look ahead to 22-23, it's vital we get a fair settlement from the central government. I think we'll feel slightly under. We're feeling we've got. We're underwhelmed at this moment in time, particularly with things like a £1.2 million NI charge and things like that. That we're not certain we're getting as good a value as we can. Although we're crunching numbers, year 2 and 3 looks slightly better, doesn't it, Mrs. King? I think, but.
A little bit more.
Little bit better. So it's inviting. So as we continue to lobby to recognise the growth, and I think that's that key part. You know, when you look at it, the funding formula review stopped taking into account population growth, and the bit that I want to be clear, population needs to play an important part of it. So we're making sure that we represent ourselves from a funding formula point of view, which we're doing, and now engaged with that team. Happy to take some questions.
Councillor Maxwell.
Right. So my question is, if we have an underspend, which you've actually just said, then what's the need for an increase in the precept then?
There just happens to be an underspend on and it's a timing one rather thing. We still have if you like, a deficit in future years. It's not it's a one-off, literally, because some stuff didn't start primarily as a consequence of COVID, delays in recruiting like that. It's not how can I put it? It's not a structural underspend. It's a one-off, which is why I would only spend it as part of a one-off. And no, you can't have it for your alarms before you ask.
I have a second question. Now, some weeks ago, when you did you did a Zoom meeting with us. The question I actually asked was, how many cars do we actually have in the county, police cars, and how many cars actually are involved in accidents, and what is the cost of maintaining these cars? And I haven't had that reply yet. So I'm just interested.
I suppose there's two parts. I'm not going to. We'll tell you what our fleet budget is. I'm probably not going to have a load of piece of work done because I suppose what's the what are you trying to what's your outcome? But let me answer this. One of the things we've recently introduced is we've just had. And you're quite right to ask about accidents of police cars. So we've just had telematics that we've rolled out across the half of the police fleet. It's now being added on the next part. From that, we can monitor accident speeds, when blue lights and all that sort of stuff gone on. I know the chief did a something of a name and shame of anyone who had accidents. It's amazing how massive drop there has been in terms of them taking a lot better care in terms of their vehicles. We have a fantastic new fleet manager. Some of you well know, and we'll arrange for a tour when it comes on stream, but our combined fleet facility for police and fire, which will both save us money. I would offer to you, the county or anyone else who wants the vehicles being managed, we could probably do some servicing or some bit of joint working possibly there that reduces costs for everyone. But actually as part of that, we're looking at our usage, how many, we've got over 450 police vehicles, so we have plenty, but we actually want to look very long and hard is, do we actually need that many? Could we, I'm picking an arbitrary number for illustrative purposes, could we operate with 100 less? But this also needs to be taken into account with, as you'll notice, and I think Councillor Gonzalez highlighted is, petrol and diesel cars are not supposed to be in use from 2030. So actually, will we need, if we had electric, it'll be a bit like Formula E. They'll all have to have two. I'm not sure how that's going to work. So when they run out of charge, they jump into another one to continue the chase. There's some very real challenges for us in terms of some of those bits there. But I'm just interested what you're doing. Some of we monitor, we're looking at the usage that we're doing in terms of our fleet, and we monitor very carefully to make sure that if anyone's having irregular accidents, if you like, or they're not taking care of it, we're managing that.
Well, I wasn't actually sort of looking at it from a negative point of view. What I was actually looking from it was that quite often people say, well, just how many police cars do we have in the county? And is that the reason why certain crimes aren't picked up? Because you don't have enough cars. And I think that, and then from an accident point of view, if a car has an accident and it's written off, you then have to find another car to fund it. So therefore, you need the funding to make sure that you've got the cars there in case you need to actually increase whatever crime rate you're actually dealing with. If you don't have, it's no good to have, because we said this on Monday actually, about having police, the car really is their office. You know, when they go out, they do all the office work within the car. But if they haven't got a car, they can't do it. And therefore, with villages where we live, they're very important to have vehicles going around, checking up and so forth, and giving people feel safe. That was the reason why I asked the question.
And you and I get on really well, so you know that I'm not being rude when I say this. Next time, just ask us that question and we can answer that more fully if you like. Just, oh, you did ask that, right? Okay, okay. So, but right, okay. Well, I can answer the question. So, do we have enough police cars? Yes. Do I actually think we have probably fractionally too many? Yes. Do we monitor the accidents? Yes. And are we managing kind of appropriately? Do we actually, however, also have one of the things is there's an actual ticket in terms of that they need to do to go on the blue lights. We're working on getting that higher as a percentage in terms of what we've got. I actually think we've got enough, but actually the reason the telematics is going to be important, and it probably is, I think it would be interesting. I'll at some point at one of our briefings, maybe we'll at the fleet one, we'll actually show you. But I don't want anyone to think we haven't got enough. We've got more than enough. And if anything, we've invested quite a lot more in our fleet to do that. There are other things we need to do to sort some of the things out you mentioned in terms of the meeting you and I had with a bunch of councillors earlier in the week in terms of rurality.
Mrs. Shields.
Yes, Commissioner, you've been very, very economical with your budget. And very efficient.
I was worried she was saying the truth then. I was saying never.
And effective. And it is because you have been efficient and effective that you can bear the overspend of the Chief Constable of 35. So my question to you is, what is it this overspend for?
I do have a detailed breakdown of the overspend, but in the end, on a budget of £142.7 million, if they only overspend by £35,000, it's 0.001%. Considering where we started and their financial management, I would challenge anyone else in the Northamptonshire public sector to hit the number quite as well as that. So I'm going to commend them for it rather than being. The fact that he hasn't underspent as wonderfully as I have is not a thing. But actually, underspending isn't always a good thing either, because there's some services I haven't delivered as a consequence of that. Now, some of that is because we haven't been able to recruit and some of those bits. But I'm assured that my colleague over here is doing her very best to make sure that she spends it, and I'm doing my best to stop her, I think, and I, Ellen?
It will vary, Mrs. Shields, as the rest of the year progresses, because this is based on 6 months worth of forecast and 6 months worth of actuals, and with the best will in the world, people do leave when we don't expect them to do, or they sometimes join a little bit earlier. So it will vary as the year progresses. It is quite close, and there is a breakdown, if you'd like to see it, in Appendix A at the back, that breaks the 35 down a little bit more for you.
Thank you very much for this additional information. Much appreciated.
Councillor Roberts, did you?
Well, no, I mean, the way these budgets are looking, they're balanced. And they're so close that any auditor would call that balanced. And money that's churning in a very complex and large budget like this, you only need the phasing within a project to go slightly awry. And the money doesn't go out when you think it's going to go out, but no, it's not real cash and you can't have it. It's in the budget and it stays in the budget to do the job.
You're dead right, as Dorothy wants to put, sometimes it's just merely, you're right, sadly, it's merely a shift of one that's delayed. It's still something we intend to do. I think the one that was probably the big material one that was in there, with the reorganisation that the government did on probation, some of the things we thought we would be paying for. So actually, if you look in reducing reoffending, that's the largest one in terms of some stuff. Now, it might be that we choose to, so that actually is one that we may choose to, we have a very extensive capital program, and actually some of the stuff, you mentioned it in terms of some of the technology. I have a pile about this big, which is my Christmas reading, which is the forces investment proposals for next year, which me and the team will be debating in the new year, which I have to read. I'm very comfortable that money will probably be spent, and more than that, with the bit that's on my desk. So.
Yes, it is a budget after all. It's never going to be absolutely dead on. A 6 month period, it's, as you say, it's sort of a bit give and take there. Mrs. Shields.
I have a further question for Helen. I'm looking at your budget detail policing forecast outturn, and I'm looking at the control room, which the variance of the forecast outturn exceed your budget by 351,000. Could you explain to me what this is about? Thank you.
I'll start. I can assure you, Mrs. Shields, that is a very good question. It's one that the Commissioner has directly asked the Chief Constable to provide much more detail on. He has given some answers so far, which are that more overtime has been required, and there's been more sickness and more abstractions to cover them. But the Commissioner has specifically asked the Chief Constable to provide that detail for him, and to for the next accountability board, I think, Commissioner.
But the early indication, it's particularly over time. Also, some people not leaving, because it's definitely more an art than a science. As you can imagine, the worst thing we need is our 999 performance numbers to drop away, because one of the things we're not, as Dorothy will know, as a presentation I did recently, our 999s and 101 calls actually continue. The good news is crime is not up, because I haven't forgotten your question from earlier, Dorothy. You tried to sneak in the other one, and I'll probably answer it now. Overall, because of some of the effects on other public services, the calls to policing continues to be higher for stuff that is non-crime, that probably isn't their responsibility, but probably we're the only ones that are still available. So we cannot be in a position where we don't have that capability. So I'm not uncomfortable that we're fractionally over in terms of those people. And of course, sometimes in terms of you bring them in training, expecting to lose some, and maybe they don't, because ironically, as the economy gets slightly more uncertain, then someone might not take that chance. There's loads of factors that affect it, and you don't need many people to kind of make that decision. It's probably no more complicated than that, but I will await the final report. As to your one that you asked me earlier, that we said we'll wait until we got into this section for, the bit about kind of crime being up. No, crime is down. The number of victims of crime is down 2%, and the number of crimes that are repeat victims of crime is 3.7%. As I talked about, there is, however, and I'm using you as an example. So Dorothy hits me, and I report it to the police, and then I also disclose that she's a repeat offender and she's done it on many occasions. I will disclose that the one that she's just done recently, will probably successfully get prosecuted therefore, but the other ones they probably can't prove and so won't. So we are encouraging, and we want all historic, and some of you have seen, there was a lady that thought she got away with abusing children 17 years ago, who had just gone to prison yesterday. We want all historic victims to come forward, but that doesn't mean crime is going up. The number of victims is genuinely going down. And that actually is quite a surprise. That might sound odd for me to say that, because also the force with the enhanced resources is actually going out and looking for more crime and taking some of that. So genuinely the county is kind of getting safer, but you can get anomalies in terms of some of these things that kind of go on.
Interestingly, can I just,
Yes, sir.
Chair, just chip in there? I mean, the man who yesterday had actually has now gone to prison, well, he's gone for life actually, having raped all these people in the morgue. You know, it's worrying to think that all these years he got away with it, and nobody picked it up. So
Yeah, it's a bit operational, that, Dorothy. Yeah, sorry, Councillor McGee.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? It might be a silly question. If crime is going down, how do you explain the biggest drug bust in Northamptonshire? How do you explain all the continuous knife crime, the continuous antisocial behaviour? What I'm seeing doesn't reflect what you're saying, and I'm not to say that that isn't true, but what I'm saying is I am seeing crime everywhere, and to sit and say that crime is going down, I have to challenge that, because that's not what I'm seeing.
Well, I'm glad you do challenge me. First of all, I can't make anyone report a crime, which is an important piece. But actually, the confidence to report is really important. You probably have, and I don't mean this how it's going to kind of sound. This job, and now your role on the panel, makes you a way more aware of everything that's kind of going on in a way of some stuff that a lot of you might not have noticed before. I think some of that will potentially be a contributory, because actually, and I'm afraid that there's a time limit on how long you could be commissioner, because actually you can only learn so many bad things, and there's probably going to be a bit of how long you want to be on this panel. If I should come and share some of the bits with you. That could be a piece. The drug bust, I'm afraid, will go down as one incident. But actually, the bit in terms of the true measure for me is the number of victims. The bit that we have to watch is that by itself is not also a true indication, because actually, if you, and I'm not trying to trivialise anything, if you have your handbag nicked on the way home, that's one which is bad, but it's nowhere near as bad if someone tries to assault you. So actually, there is also the bit that we also, the force use called the Cambridge Harm Index, that try and manage demand. You have to take account of volume, but actually it's high harm, high effects on people that we kind of look at. So I look at the bits that I look at. Number of victims is probably the most important to me, because that's a true indication. But I have got, for instance, there's one in terms, there's a definition which I won't get into now called Regina crime, which is kind of crimes against the state almost. Some of those are kind of going up and stuff like that. So I'm only giving, there are other measures. In terms of reporting, overall the numbers will show us go up, because, I was using my example with Dorothy. If you then disclose she hits me once and she then disclose when we're talking to them, and we're getting better at talking to victims as well, it will kind of fluctuate.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I get what you're saying about me sitting here and going through different things, but I also do think that it's very brazen. Like, the crime is very brazen, it is everywhere. I think we need to reaffirm our thinking sometimes in some of the conversations that we have around, okay, this is what's recorded, but actually, I mean, you only have to go on Facebook and you see videos of kids running around the streets with knives. You only have to go and look at the instance of, we need to focus on how we're going to get more crimes reported then, because I agree with you, if you look at the figures and the reportings, but it's not just me sitting on this panel that's made me aware of that. It's so brazen. There's kids, there's in broad daylight, all the incidents have happened in broad daylight. Crime isn't underground. So I understand what you're saying, but I do think we need to reframe our thinking and words around that.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone on the, oh, sorry, didn't see you. Didn't see you down there. Yeah.
Commissioner, thank you, Chair. Commissioner, going back to vehicles. Vehicles, yes. Did I say something wrong?
No.
She thought you said hippos. Hippos. Oh, no, I'm not in the zoo at the moment. I'm right here. Yes, in terms, when we are looking at purchasing or repurchasing, do we base it on reliability in terms of value for money? You know, rather than just buying a brand, do we look at the reliability of the vehicles? And
Absolutely. Oh, okay. But it's an interesting one, because I think we're going to be in for a very interesting time, because 2030, and people go to me, oh, what are you doing about electric? And I'll just leave you with this thought as a final one, because I think you're going to work plan in a minute, which we shall take the opportunity to leave at that point, because you tend to talk for a very long time that we could go and do something else in. But actually, you know, some of you have visited our building in Wellingborough. To charge one Tesla on fast charge will use more power than the totality of the building of Derby House. Yes, so the actual infrastructure needed to support electric vehicles, let alone electric fire engines, which are currently 4 times more expensive than a diesel one. There's some real challenges that are kind of going there. Yeah, I mean, I hope that, funny enough, for those that haven't seen it, JCB have just done one of their vehicles with actually running on hydrogen or something. That is the first one that gave me some confidence about what engines might look, what a fire engine kind of might look like. But we're going to be for some very interesting times in terms of estates. So actually our plan of bringing some of these things together, but there's also going to be a broader question about what the grid looks like across the county and the capability that kind of comes with it.
Yeah, and charging points available.
It's not just your fire engine, your fleet.
I mentioned fleet, but all of them. But fire engines are, the thought of loads of electric and water in one vehicle doesn't worry me at all.
Okay, any other comments on the finance paper? No, so I think it.
Is that an appropriate moment for us to request leave of you if you're going to go on to your work plan if no one else has anything?
I don't see that we'll be going on a while, but if you wish to leave, that'd be fine.
Well, I for those of you that I shall not see before Christmas, I wish you the very best of a very happy and Merry Christmas and a safe one. And as always, I thank you for your support. And as the critical friend, I think is the term that used, I appreciate your help and support. I look forward to seeing you in the new year to discuss precepts and money, but do have a safe and as best you can a COVID-free Christmas. All right, take care, everyone.
The same to you. And I just hope that you'll be able to actually get out because you might need it some sort of pass. Okay, so if we can go on to the next item. Well, Councillor Strachan's talking. I think, James, you're going to present this report with you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the standard report that shows the panel what it has on its work programme to do. It's reported to each meeting, obviously, so the panel can take stock, make sure that the work programme still reflects its priorities and ultimately is focused on producing the best possible outcomes from the panel's work. So the latest version of the work programme is page 161 onwards. Just to highlight a couple of points. Clearly, the focus of the next panel meeting in February will be on the Commissioner's proposed precepts. The panel was due to have had a briefing session with the Chief Constable and the Chief Fire Officer, and also a visit to Derby House on the 22nd of November, which needed to be cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. So there'll need to be some work between myself and the Commissioner's office to find an alternative date for that, assuming the panel still wishes to go ahead with it. And also to highlight, if I can find the page, the panel had previously requested to receive a report, and it was highlighted earlier in the meeting, on action being taken in the county to respond to the outcomes of the Kerslake report and the public inquiry into the Manchester Arena terror attack. That doesn't have a time slot for it yet, so I don't know if at this point the panel would want to pin that down to a specific date. Or it could be kept on the panel's radar and slotted in appropriately in future. As I say, Chairman, it's the standard report. I hope it's clear, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Well, earlier on, we did mention that maybe because the sort of Grenfell and that's not quite such an issue here, but there are other issues, like as Stephen said, HMOs, and as Councillor Maxwell said about other fire issues, the licensed premises, etc. So maybe we could make it a little bit more general, but I think, you know, if we pencil it into the 14th of April, and then if something else, you know, more urgent comes up, then we'll have to review that. But that will be my sort of thinking. Are there any other topics that anyone wishes to sort of add? Sure.
As I was sending you the email and telephone conversation I have read with you regarding performance update, you did suggest that perhaps we should have a workshop to discuss those performance things.
Yes, sorry, we didn't mention that. Sorry, Mrs. Shields has sent me quite a few questions, one or two of which have come up within the course of today anyway. But there were quite a few of them, and I said, if we, you know, I think it was 16 questions or something like that, was it? I don't know, there were quite a few anyway. If we take them all today, it's going to take up a lot of the time. So I said, two alternatives were, one, to have them as a question which we send to the Commissioner and then get written replies back, as we've done sometimes on scrutiny. The alternative is to have a sort of workshop on performance, and so we can, you know, go into a bit more detail on those things there. So I don't know what other people think. It was a bit more detailed than we needed to do sort of on the strategic meeting. Chair,
I like the idea of writing to the Commissioner and allowing him to respond. And if we do feel that there's some of them we do need further discussions, I don't think there's any problem in organising a workshop where that he can bring in some of his other peripheral staff to help and encourage a more informed discussion. So I think initially ask him the question, he might be able to answer them to our satisfaction or to your satisfaction.
Yes, you're.
No, I mean, obviously,
I mean, I have forwarded, as it was requested previous year, a question on performance. And so some of them is addressed to the Commissioner, some of them is probably addressed to Helen. But the whole idea to me is debating, is about having an opinion and answering to the specific of the performance.
I think the commissioner should be the person we address these things to initially.
Yeah.
It's him on this case, and it could be her. It's for him to answer to that.
Yeah.
And bring staff in it who requires that. I just feel that we need to set criteria. There's certain things that we want to see better, and we need to set those out and then watch them and ask for a report on a reasonably regular basis. It's no good having 1 or 2 reports a year. You may even need monthly reports, but that's something that you need to sit down with the commissioner and talk.
Well, the government has said that there's a requirement for the commissioner to set up a performance framework.
Yeah.
So this will obviously be part of an ongoing new thing. But I think to kick it off, it probably. Oh, sorry, James. Yeah. Is if you and sort of I can work with you, sort of take a few of them off because they've already been answered. Sort of get a list of questions and then maybe send them around to the other members of the panel and refine them and then send them off to the commissioner. And then at that point, we get the answers back and perhaps if we say, well, actually, they're very useful, but we've got other questions and it might be useful then to have a session on performance. Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea, I've always liked the idea of forwarded a question to you. So like that, there may be other panel member who have a similar question. And so like that, we can synchronize everything and then forward it to the commissioner with a view to obtain an answer to those specific. So like that, we don't lose time and resource, and it is most effectively reported.
Yeah, I mean, if we send these out to the panel, they might say, well, actually, I was thinking on the lines of that, but it doesn't quite go far enough. Could you add in X, Y, and Z, and sort of have a little bit of a sort of by email sort of ideas of these questions. James, you.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I mean, a few points. Yeah, to pick up on Councillor Roberts's comment, yeah, the panel's relationship should absolutely be with the Commissioner. The panel is there to hold the Commissioner to account. The Commissioner holds the Chief Constable to account, or the Chief Fire Officer. So anything like this, I think the panel goes to the Commissioner in the first instance. Clearly, the Commissioner may need to speak to colleagues to get answers to the questions, but they should go through the Commissioner rather than directly to any other part of the organisations involved. Secondly, I think there's been periodic discussion between the panel and the Commissioner over the years about just what performance information is reported to the panel, how it's reported, to reflect on the one hand what the panel thinks it needs to know to carry out its role, and on the other hand the parameters of that role, which are again to scrutinise the Commissioner, not operational matters, certainly. The Commissioner mentioned when he was presenting his draft plan earlier today that there would be, the draft plan was set out his strategic documents, there would be a performance framework under that, and the elements of that performance framework would be reported to the panel in the future. So I guess what I'm saying is with a new plan, there's a further opportunity for the panel to look at what's reported to it, what it wants, and what it in order to carry out its role effectively. And then lastly, I think I'd say there is a great deal of scope for the panel to make information requests to the Commissioner between meetings. I think that needs to be centrally coordinated rather than individual members going off for precisely for practical reasons, but for precisely what the reasons you mentioned, which is if one panel member would like to know X, then possibly others would as well. And I think what that also does is hopefully puts the panel in a better position where it is using its meetings to use information to scrutinise the Commissioner rather than to gather information. So if members have got a factual question about an issue within its remit, then that can be raised with the Commissioner's office between panel meetings, providing it's done in a coordinated way. The information can be provided as soon as it's available. That then hopefully puts the panel in a better position to say, okay, Commissioner, well, we asked this question off agenda, you provided the information, and our conclusions resulting from that lead us to ask about this particular issue. So that's taking information gathering out of panel meetings a bit, and therefore making more time at panel meetings for using information to do scrutiny, which is something I'd always be keen to see with any scrutiny committee, of which the panel is one.
In fact, we used to do that with the county council, didn't we, James? And it worked very well. Just on this coordination, would you think that ought to come through yourself?
Yes, I do,
Good
Chair.
idea. So I think perhaps if you sort of refresh the questions, send them to James, and he can then send them out to panel. Oh, you sent them, right? Okay.
And I can also circulate them to all panel members,
exactly,
so everyone knows what everyone's asking. Because one member may agree entirely with information requested by another.
Yeah. Yes, so is everyone, yes, Councillor Stratton.
Could we circulate them to the members, who stands in for the regular members?
Oh, substitutes, yeah. Actually, that's something. I mean, we've got only yourself from the West today. I mean, we had apologies from others, but you do have one substitute, but I don't know quite what the mechanism is for calling that substitute and asking them to come in. I would have thought, sorry. Can you turn your speaker on, sorry?
Yeah, sorry. I would have thought that if a member can't attend, I would have thought that they will get in touch with the person who's supposed to stand in.
Well, that's one thing I did ask, because
that's how it should be. Because you wouldn't know that somebody isn't turning up unless they get in touch with you. But then why should you have to contact the person standing in for them? The reason why you've got somebody to stand in if the person who's supposed to be there isn't available is for representation.
Yeah. Well, on the North, I have been pushing to get substitutes. I haven't managed to do it yet. In fact, we're 100% attendance. So it's not happened today, but I did purposely write to everyone and say, can you let me know if you can't attend so I can try and get some substitutes. On the West, I did write to James, and you said that apart from the one, they would choose a substitute as it happened. If they knew they needed one from one area, they would choose them. But I think we need to perhaps tighten up on that procedure, because obviously, does it go through the office? Does it go through the member, etc.? So that everyone knows how they should do it.
Well, I would have thought that perhaps maybe James would contact the chief executive, and then she would then have a word with the leader of the groups.
I don't know what you think, James.
Because the leader of the groups has to agree to who is going to be assigned.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
I think you're talking about differences of approach. some authorities appoint committee members and name substitutes for each of those members. I'm not sure if that's what the North does, possibly not, but certainly what the West does is appoint committee members, and then if ever there's a need for a substitute, it's for the relevant political group to put forward a member.
Yeah.
In other words, there aren't you don't have 5 councillor members from the West on the panel and 5 substitute members. I mean, the Labour group have identified Councillor is it Councillor Carley? Sorry, yeah. The Labour group have identified a substitute. Strictly speaking, they didn't need to do that. They could have if the need to send a substitute arise, who it was could be identified on an as and when basis. I mean, if the panel wanted to comment on that situation, then that's a matter for the panel. I mean, what I might suggest as well is it probably is a practical consideration with meetings happening at the moment that people may need to drop out at short notice, and it may possibly be more challenging to find. Well, it's going to be challenging to find a short notice substitute at any time. It may possibly be even more challenging given the current context in which we're working.
I was just trying to work out what the procedure was. Say, let's say on the West, if a member is going to be absent, should they contact their group then to get the substitute? Is that the best route?
That would
I mean, obviously, last minute ones, you can't always do that, but you know, if they know in advance, let's say.
Yeah. So, I mean, one response to this may be for the panel to reinforce almost to itself that if as a panel member you find that you're not able to attend a meeting, you go out of your way to try and find a substitute.
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 alternatives. You come to myself as chair, and then I'll go to the relevant group, or you know, I've probably got more contact in the North, let's say, than the West. But I could contact somebody there to ask for them to sort it out. But
because of the way the terms of reference for the panel are written, you will always have a chair from the North and a vice chair from the West, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So that gives the panel's leadership group, so to speak, a contact into, well, of course, groups, that would depend on the political groups they came from, but it would mean you always had one of the chair positions being held by representative from each authority. Unless, of course, an independent member was appointed as to either of them, which I shouldn't forget.
I shall have a word with the vice chair, and we can sort it out between us of how we.
Good suggestion, Madam Chair. I think that.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Maxwell.
A suggestion you were saying about suggestions of things going forward. Well, one thing actually I'd find quite interesting, being on the children's panel, and I'm very aware of the fact that a lot of children have actually, they fall into the category of children through the crimes they've actually committed. It'd be quite interesting to see how they're going to move forward, given they've got new, different, West and North, how they're going to move forward from the point of view of making sure that children who have committed crimes are actually going to be looked after.
I think it's probably the youth offending service, which I think comes under the council rather than the commissioner.
No, well, not really, because the thing is, it seems that given these 76 children over the last 2 years, were just sort of like just dropped off the radar, right? You know, clearly that wasn't made aware. Actually, they didn't realise that they dropped off. And I think now we've got new councils, I think there need to be more joined up thinking, more transparency. And I think it needs to address the very thing about there is an increase in children and antisocial behaviour and what they actually do and how they think they can get away with it. I just think there needs to be a bit more joined up thinking about how you're going to move forward to look after these children in the future, because they're going to be adults of the future as well.
Yes, Councillor McGee.
I agree with Councillor Maxwell. Is there any way that we could hold a workshop with the Commissioner and with the Youth Offending Service in the same room potentially, and take that opportunity to ask those questions, given the situation at the moment and the fact that this is something that is an extremely intense and worrying situation for Northamptonshire West and North? Perhaps we could use the responsibility and limited authority that we have to make sure that those two services are in the same room at the same time, so that we can have an open and honest discussion and potentially have the opportunity to invite members of the public or people that are in those situations to that workshop.
Yeah,
it couldn't happen probably until I would say probably Easter time, because if we're appointing new heads of children's services straight after Christmas, then they need to be embedded in to what's going on in North.
Councillor Roberts.
We've already discussed that if there's a requirement for a workshop, we would use that, but we must be careful we don't get operational or try to get involved in the operation.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a bit concerned that might.
To the Commissioner,
yeah,
and ask the Commissioner the question, and ask the Commissioner to come back with a solution. I hear what you say, and the Commissioner, we can challenge the Commissioner to give us the information in the best way possible, and suggest that we have the workshop, and it might be, rather than sort of get into another layer of operational thinking.
I think I'll probably have a chat with the Commissioner about it and see what, yeah.
It's a good challenge, it's a good thing, so let's find out what he and his team think about it.
I do think that given the opportunity that we have here and the situation of power that the Commissioner has and the responsibility that he has, and given, well, I don't know what it is, but the annual salary that he has, he should be unafraid of challenge, and we should promote being transparent. So I would definitely advocate for that to happen. Thank you.
Yes. Well, when you say advocate, you just agreed to do it. So.
Yeah.
Picking up on what you said, there is nothing stopping you to prepare a questionnaire vis-à-vis of the report is submitted to the panel, channel that to James, who then will ask the Commissioner for a workshop with us. So like that, you may have the councillor may have exactly the same question than yours, so we make sure that the question, you know, are all listed, so like that he's prepared to answer them.
Yes, I think if, you know, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor McGee, if you both put down in writing what your concern is, and we'll collate it with James and perhaps send that to the Commissioner and see if that, you know, we're not satisfied with the answer of what happened, what the situation is, then we can, you know, with everything else, so we said we could call a workshop.
Chair, what I'd like to say is, I mean, I think perhaps it's slightly you've misled what we're saying. In the report that we've just done, it clearly states that there is an issue with young people at the present moment. We are not addressing them from a police point of view. And clearly, I don't know about you, you must live in an area, well, I know where you live actually, but where I live, antisocial behaviour is every day of the week. You know, it's not just in the morning, it's in right throughout the day.
Where they live?
Pardon?
Who are you?
I'm talking about Councillor Mercer.
The chair.
Yeah, it's the chair where she lives.
You know where I live.
In an antisocial behaviour, sadly, is
Now, luckily, touch wood, if there is wood, I don't, but.
You don't, but I do,
no,
you see. And
no,
the thing is, the way I
obviously,
see
yeah.
it is that I live on the main road and I feel what you were explaining is I live between two schools, two secondary schools, and I think that antisocial behaviour, so if I go out and say, right, excuse me, you shouldn't be doing this, it's either two fingers up or F off. And so what I'm saying is...
I am shocked. No, that close to the school.
Yeah, well, I think it's still a performance. In a way, it's still performance, isn't it? It's still, in the same sense that, you know, Mrs. Shields has made some questions and they don't relate to that particular topic, but they're still performance issues, and yours is a performance issue. So in a way, it's adding that to the questions and then drawing that into the framework.
Could I just say that one of the great benefits of having James in post is that we send our stuff to him and he can have a conversation with us. He's been doing this for a very long time, he doesn't know his stuff. But if I was chairing the meeting, I would say to anybody, send the questions in, no matter what. Send them in and we'll look at them and then we'll decide what we want to do with them.
Yeah. So,
It has got to be linked to what it's provide to the panel, because that's what we are here for, to scrutinize whatever he's sending, because that is the evidence that is put forward, so we can then debate that and ask questions. So your question, channel them to Jane, and yours as well. So like that, we have everything listed, and then we can have a constructive workshop with him and obtaining the answer.
I'm maybe with what was said is misled. What we're saying is we're talking about things that could be important to the panel to look into and key challenges. Myself and Councillor Maxwell have raised the key challenge, and all I'm doing as someone who's new to this panel but is also young is looking at how we can do things in an innovative and creative way, is just raising a different way of dealing with it. I'm not trying to shut down any traditional ways of working. All I'm saying is, as a young person on this panel and a person that lives in the same area and has been through some of the similar interactions and things that we're discussing, that there are other ways of doing this, and we have in our remit a sense of that is possible to do, so why wouldn't we do it?
James has got some comments.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I mean, in its very broadest sense, the panel is ultimately able to scrutinise decisions made and actions taken by the Commissioner in carrying out his role. So that is a very broad remit, albeit with the absolute emphasis on it must be directed to the Commissioner. Having said that, of course, the Commissioner has got priorities in his plan that relate to young people and antisocial behaviour. So this is something that can be done in principle. The work to do is to put some more flesh on the bones and work out exactly what, when, how, and who.
I think if it's sent into James and he collates it, and then it's sent round to the panel members, and we feel, well, that topic is a separate one that we ought to just put on the agenda, and that one is one for a workshop, we can see that, but it's by getting that information in, we'll be able to sort of judge what sort of level of discussion we need, whether we need a discussion on the panel or not.
Because at the end of the day, you want to get an answer, don't you?
Yeah, we all do. So
Yeah,
not to take that away. It's just
Sorry, we're still recording.
Sorry.
And we're still.
Just so I'm clear, is this talking about potentially a piece of work on young people who are not in education, employment and training, and the risk of them becoming involved in crime and to them becoming involved in crime? Or did I not get that correct from the earlier
That was
discussion?
certainly one of the points, wasn't it?
I think the point is that over the last 2 years during COVID-19, these children have fallen off the radar. And whilst Children's Services are saying,
Which children, Councillor Max, sorry, Councillor? Needs.
no, I'm talking about Children's Services who,
That would be
That's
a very
more council.
broad topic if you were talking
oh, right.
about the impact on children and young people of the situation over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I'm talking about children who live in NNC part of the county who, over the last 2 years, have not had the same education or psychology needs or speech therapy needs or the needs which would actually enable them to become.
But Councillor Maxwell, that applies to all children.
I do realise that.
I mean,
What I'm
okay, some might suffer more than others, but
what I'm saying is what came out of yesterday's meeting, because I went to a meeting yesterday, what came out of yesterday's meeting was that whilst they realise there is an issue, my thinking is that a suggestion is that at the present moment it's not being addressed, and it hasn't been addressed for 2 years. And even though the police are doing their utmost to do something about it, it doesn't seem to factor in there. They've put it in the report, this report, which we've read today, but they don't, it's not actually factored in about how they're going to resolve it.
I think we've got a way forward, you know, put your thoughts in writing. If there's, oh, sorry, Karen.
So it sounds as if the panel is kind of saying it's identifying this as a potential piece of work, but subject to further discussion.
Yes.
To consider the practicalities involved.
So I was going on to the next thing, which is the date of the next panel meeting, which is in the Sunflower Room. And
Going forward, I think it would be really helpful on the agenda if we have time slots allocated. I mean, this meeting's gone on for 4 hours now. None of us have had a break. We all start to lose concentration with each other about what's going on. I just think that I think it would really focus us if there is time put on each agenda item.
you used to do that, didn't you, John?
To focus us. Every other meeting that I've attended and I've chaired, the same thing's happened. It's had time allocated to it, and we've got through it in a good amount of time. I just think, you know, after 4 hours, none of us have had a chance to even go out and get any fresh air after 4 hours. I don't actually think it's very healthy. Yeah, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, where is the Sunflower Room?
The Sunflower Room is there. It's that half of.
So it's over there. Okay.
So clearly, whether we meet there, whether the panel meets there in February will depend on the situation in February.
Yes, obviously. But if we do meet here, could we perhaps sort the assisting us to get to this point?
Yes, apologies, Chair.
Because
that was
none of us have passes to get in, although Mr. Shields does seem to have.
There was an element of rustiness on my part to do with holding an in-person meeting here. I was out of practice.
Okay, that's the 3rd of February at 1 o'clock, and if it's in person, it's the Sunflower Room, which is in here. Okay, so I think we can. I'd just like to say, I probably shan't see, well, I don't know whether I'll see you before Christmas, but I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas and a very healthy new year, and look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
I don't work anywhere. I saw